everyone has their microphone on? And the lights on?
Mr. Bellion?
Great. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The Design Review Board public meeting of July 12th, 2018 is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves, and please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones at this time. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to completely fill out one of the speaker cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. You will be asked to speak by the board when your case is called. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a project in the event of a return for redesign by the board must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent hearings. Current Design Review Board agendas are available on our city's website at www.glendaleca.gov. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and Design Review Board appeals are available from staff. Roll call. Board Member Arzumanian is absent. Board Member Benlian?
Here.
Chairman Charchian?
Here.
Board Member Malikian is also absent, and Board Member Simonian.
Present.
Report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on July 3rd, 2018. Next item is oral communication. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. I do not believe we had any.
I do not have any
Cards turned in for oral communications, which brings us to the hearing review calendar. We have no staff announcements, and there are 3 cases on tonight's agenda. I'd like to turn the matter now over to Chairman Charchian.
Okay, let's go ahead and start with the first matter on calendar, which is PDR 172-6364-3440 Linda Vista Road, and have Mr. Joe go ahead and.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As usual, I'll approach the board to give a brief presentation. So once again, like as you had mentioned and announced, the proposal is a 2-story single-family home that's approximately a little bit under 2,400 square feet, and it will include a 2-car garage facing the street that's approximately 474 square feet. The site is vacant. It's approximately 9,220 square feet. It's located in the hillside zone, R1R. It is a fairly steep lot with an average current slope of 67%. On site, there are 4 protected trees, which the applicant's proposing to remove 1, which an arborist report was proposed, or actually was included with a variance, which I'll go into, and it was approved by the City Council. The applicant proposes, as you can see the cut and fill map here, a total of 120 cubic yards of grading, which will include 450 cubic yards of cut and 330 cubic yards of fill. Just to go in the background, as I mentioned earlier, there was a variance application that was approved by the City Council last year, back in July. What the standards and setback variance was approved was it allowed for a 3-foot, 10-inch setback from the street front, as you can see from here, and allow the driveway to be 3 feet 10 inches as well. One of the unique circumstances and the basis of this is, 1, to conform with the hillside design guidelines to allow it to nestle into the hillside. As you can see here, it's being set into the hillside, and it's allowing it to follow the terrain in the natural grade. And also there's an unusual or a special circumstance of the property that allowed this setback to be so close, and it being it has an extended right-of-way width, which the edge of pavement from the street front property line is 15 feet away. So, so as you can see here, even though it has a 3-foot 10-inch setback, there is a 15-foot right-of-way area to the edge of pavement. So it has an appearance of an 18-foot 10-inch setback from the existing edge of pavement. Part of the variance application, Public Works Engineering commented that there's no plans to widen Linda Vista to use that area, and they would allow the driveway to encroach by an encroachment permit into the public right-of-way. moving on forward to the site planning of this project.
Mr. Jones, sorry to interrupt.
Sure, no problem.
I thought you were going to touch upon the tree issue. Is there a variance as to the tree being removed?
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. One of the trees is going to make way, which they're going to preserve all the other trees on site. They're going to remove the tree to make way for the driveway, which is in the public right-of-way. Part of the arborist report was to replace this in a 3-to-1 ratio. So they're going to replace 3 other trees on site, and it's probably going to have to be somewhere downhill on the site to the urban forester's satisfaction and staff satisfaction. Or if you have any recommendations as well, we can incorporate that as well.
Okay, thank you.
And do you know how wide the property is on Linda Vista?
Let me see. Yeah, I can't see, but let me get to you on that when I look at the reduced set, and I'll get back to you on that. Yeah, I can't see. I know it's a little bit convoluted. I have it somewhere in the one. I'll get back to you on that. Moving forward, just to quickly go over the site planning of this, as I mentioned before, it is with the reduced setback. And staff supports the site planning of this because the site planning of this allows for the project to nestle into the hillside, allowing the building location profile to follow the natural terrain. As I mentioned before, it's a fairly steep site with a 67% average current slope, so it allows it to follow the contour and not stick out. Moving on to mass and scale. As viewed from Linda Vista Road, it has a 1-story profile, even though it's a 2-story building, which this is on a downslope, which it follows the rhythm and the context of the neighborhood along Linda Vista. Just going on to details, the applicant is proposing wood aluminum-clad windows and doors with a mix of horizontal and fixed windows with recessed placement. One of the conditions that staff is recommending to the board is in lieu of the styrofoam surrounds that they're showing over here, that they investigate an alternative material that would be better fitting with the contemporary design. And just to wrap it up with the finishes that they're proposing on here is stucco, stone veneer. They're going to have a standing seam metal roof, and the metal roof band, as you can see, on all elevations where it meets the roof. If you would like, Mr. Chair or the board, I can go over all of staff's conditions if you haven't already read it. Only one of the ones that staff was thinking about striking out as or maybe we can, for your consideration, is to reduce the amount of stone veneer at the front entry. Staff feels that this design with the rendering, it might be fine with it, but all other the conditions of the 5, 2 through 5, we still are standing by.
Okay, I don't think we need a reading, do we?
No.
Okay.
I have a question now.
Sure.
As depicted on this kind of film map, where is, and I'm trying to understand the driveway and the variance that was granted.
Yep.
Where does the right-of-way begin and where does the property line begin?
Sure. So the property line here is by this solid line right here. This is the street front property line.
That's what I was trying to figure out, but it's usually dashed. Okay.
No, I understand. And the edge of pavement is right here, and it's caught out here.
I see.
So this is the extended right-of-way width that's kind of unusual for the site, and the Public Works Department had not identified this area being widened because,
I understand.
yeah.
And the variance that was approved basically, instead of having an 18-foot driveway completely within the property, 3 feet of it more or less is within the property, and the rest was approved via variance to be part of the right-of-way.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
The property line along the frontage is about 75 feet.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Joe, one quick question that I had before we open it up. Is there a tree report somewhere?
Yes, I have the variance file right here.
Okay. I'd like to look at that while we open it up. Let's go ahead and open up the public comment portion of the hearing. and invite Mr. Jung? Chung. And you are the applicant and architect? You have 5 minutes, sir, to add any comments that you'd like for the project.
Sure. It's been a long procedure to get to this point. We have gone through a lengthy design process and then lengthy variance approval process. And after that, to get to this point, took more than 6 months after we got approval for the variance. But as Dennis mentioned, I really appreciate his effort to put together this package and also make a recommendation. Also, Lilia was the one first look at it and then make a recommendation. So this site is kind of unique because it has a 67% of slope. Not many site has a this steep slope on it. And then there was a height limitation, and then the setback was a kind of setback was a challenging issue, but the variance was approved based on the existing condition, as Dennis mentioned, that the edge of the pavement to the garage is like a 24 feet to 25 feet, so it's quite a bit of enough space, even if our setback is only 3 feet 10 inches from the property line. So that was well justified. And then from the street, because of the height limit, we utilized the flat roof configuration for the roof design, because you cannot have a pitched roof on this. So we have the metal roof and then the flat. And then if you look at it from the street, it does have slightly elevated as far as the existing property line from the street to the property line, slightly elevated, but we just bring it down to accommodate the city allowed the drainage and all that. So with that, if you look at the front elevation, it is shown on the dotted line that you don't really see that much of frontage, and there's one story, but it looks like a 3/4 story if you look at it from the street, because of the side beam go up and the building goes down. So there really is not much of impact from the street toward the view of this house. And then if you look at it from the back, even if it's kind of high, the height is kind of high in looking, but there's a lot of landscaping in the area. We have set up the story pole over there, and then the contractor really had a hard time because of all this obstruction of a landscaping area being there. So once this building is built, all you're going to see is just the 2-story. You're not going to see anything under the balcony on the lower level, which is the bedroom area. Other than that, I think I have read the condition of approval recommendation, and then I'm all in agreement with the reduce the amount of the stone veneer and the change the surrounds with the better, much better quality than the styrofoam surrounds, and the provide trash locations and everything else. So we are in agreement with that. So at this time, I'd like to ask you a favor to approve this long proceeded project so that we can move on and then be able to build something on this very tough, challenging site.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Sir.
you.
Any questions?
No?
I just have a quick question.
Sure.
And I don't have the tree report, so I might ask you a question that I can't comment on later, but until I see that document, I just want to ask a couple questions. It looks like from the site plan that you're planning on doing some retaining walls underneath the tree canopy. Is that correct?
Underneath the tree canopies,
And, I mean, in this.
You mean the
in this-
front of the
in this-
side?
In this
Front-
section here, let me ask you this. What is this? Is this a
Oh,
retaining
that's
wall?
existing. That's existing.
Oh, this is existing.
That's existing. Yes, it's
Okay.
already there. So we don't really propose anything impeding
It's
the
not-
roots.
I didn't see any marking that says existing.
Oh, that's
So
existing.
this was put in by the previous?
Yes,
owner?
yes, yeah. It's a neighbor's retaining wall. And then if you look at the tree report, the tree in the middle is in a really bad condition. So, and we are going to replace it with 3:1 ratio. So
Okay,
it shouldn't
Thank
be a
you.
problem. Thank you. Yeah, my client is here, neighbors here. If you have
Okay.
any question, you can.
I don't have speaker cards from the owner. So if the owner wants to speak, they'd have to fill out a speaker card. But I have a Sophia Kelly. Come on up.
I think
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you owner?
typically the owner,
Did you want to speak, sir? Oh, I'm sorry. Typically, you can come up and then you can fill up the speaker card afterwards.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the permission, Mr. Chairman. My name is Paul Kim. As my architect, Mr. Chung, has stated, it's been about close to about 4 years in making to get to this point. And I bought the piece of land that I treasure, but my wife strongly disagreed in the beginning for obvious reasons. But we have just me and my wife. We don't have any kids, and we don't have extended family. We have one. It's my wife's brother, and 2 little kids. But I would try to make this home a home that we're gonna stay till I don't know when. Just more like a retirement home, even though I have not retired yet. I probably have to work very hard to keep the house the way it is. But we went through a few hurdles, and thanks to the everybody that was involved, we were able to get the approval on the variance. Thanks to the condition of the extent that encroachment that we obtained from the city, and that made a very valid proposition for everybody involved, including my wife. She said, maybe we can do it now. That's what she said. This is going to be a very small house. Looks up from the house that you look at the elevation picture. It looks like a big mansion. Just I think it's just kind of optical illusion on that.
So
It's only 23 on this. And we originally wanted to make it a 1,500, as small as possible, because it's going to be just me and my wife. So we don't need, But only reason that we have extra room is because maybe my mother-in-law would like to come see her daughter, which is my wife, time to time, so she could stay over. But the city recommended that we should build the structure is a little bit bigger than 1,500. So that's what I'm at. And as for the tree that Mr. Chairman mentioned, we had the we had a recommendation. I saw the tree report saying that, and my neighbor is here as well, but she mentioned that tree's been pretty much dead for many years. So we had the arborist come out and see the tree, and they determined that we can actually take down that tree. I love trees. If I could have really, because only reason that I fell in love with this site.
I think you've run out of the.
What?
No, I'm sorry. No, it's time. I'm sorry, I apologize. No, you're good. You're good. The yellow's good. The yellow's good.
Okay.
I looked it up and I saw yellow and I got
The
it.
reason that I really liked it was, it was more like a Jerry Maguire moment. I'm sure you've seen that movie. When I first went to that site to look at the lot, there's 2 deers sitting on the edge, right there, sitting there. And when I saw them, I go, my goodness, it's like they had me at hello, basically. That's how I felt. So my mother and my mother-in-law, whom I love very much as well, they came to look at it. They said, this is totally against that feng shui. So, I'm Korean. I'm not Chinese. I told my mother-in-law, I don't believe in that feng shui stuff. She goes, well, the north side is
That
blocked.
beep did mean that your time was up. So wrap it up, sir. Thank you so much.
Oh, this was interesting,
wanted
Mr.
to hear
Chair.
the fun fact
Right.
story.
Well,
He was
you
getting
know,
to the point.
I appreciate it, but we were going to try to keep it on time today.
Right. You
Sophia
cut him off
Kelly?
at the best part.
I said he could finish, but he decided not to. So,
Hello. I live at the house actually directly below. Is this on?
state your name for the record.
Sophia Kelly. I live at the house directly below, right across the canyon. So as he mentioned, the deer that he saw, there's a ton of wildlife in our canyon. But that wasn't my main concern. Privacy was kind of the main factor that I was wondering. I see that the balconies in the rendering, I was wondering, is that off of a bedroom? Because right now we have our backyard and the only privacy we have is this little kind of hole in between the trees, which is where the proposed house is going to be. So once that's built, we're going to have 2 stories of balconies just watching down at our backyard pretty much. We're right across the canyon.
I'm going to direct you to that Google Earth map over there. I'm just kind of pointing to with my finger.
Yes.
Are you the White House with the white roof?
This one or this?
I'm with the brown roof, yeah,
There you
on Tyrell.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank
So
you.
my question was, those balconies, are those off of a bedroom or in the
There appears
rendering?
to be rendering off of both stories. So there's
Uh-huh.
living room space and
Okay.
bedroom space that are serviced by
Okay.
balconies.
That was pretty much my main concern, is the privacy factor, because on our right side we have another house similar to this. It's 3 stories, all balconies. They can pretty much see everything we're doing, and also to the other side. So that's kind of the only area that we have is privacy.
I understand. Thank you. Any other?
That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a reminder to the owner to fill out a speaker's card, because I don't have it. And last speaker that I have a card for is Robert Moore. Mr. Moore?
I'm Robert Moore, but the item
I'm sorry, this was for Verdugo. I apologize. They got mispiled. I think there's no other speakers. No other speakers on this project. Anyone else want to speak on Linda Vista? Seeing none,
I got a neighbor who is to speak, just showed up. Is it okay?
okay, you can speak for yourself and come on up and state your name for the record. Sir, state your name for the record and then fill that out afterwards.
Sure.
You have 2 minutes.
My name is Danny Hayes, and I live at 3434 Linda Vista Road, which is adjacent to the property in discussion. And we've kind of followed him through the process, and we've talked to him about a lot of issues. We had flooding on our street and different things. But so we're looking forward to having him be a neighbor and for him to finally get his home approved. It's been a long drive for him. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other speakers? The applicant is entitled to a rebuttal period, but since there was no comments, there was a comment in opposition. You get 2 minutes of rebuttal. That would be Mr. Chung or the owner.
Ms. Kelly, nice to meet you.
So the issue that you'll be covering on the rebuttal would be the privacy issue.
Privacy issue. One thing I can assure you, everybody, is we are very private people ourselves, myself and my wife. So even though we got balconies, we're probably not going to be there all the time. And one more thing is, it's just me and my wife. So it's really not going to have issues. In my opinion, we're not going to be out at the balcony. Also, from the design aspect of it, I think we're going to be, mostly we are indoor people. We're not really outdoor people. But, it's nice to have a balcony because to keep the grading to really keep the gradient. And that's a construction issue. But, we're not going to have wild parties, Kelly. So, and we're not going to be looking down at neighbors and things like that. Nature.
Thank you. Do we want to hear from the architect? Yeah. Architect, I think we want to get some more detail on the privacy issue for your rebuttal.
Yes, when it gets to privacy issue, we often use either obscure glass on the balcony rails, or we can add some landscaping for the screening of the direct view toward the neighbors. And since it's kind of sloping down, and then their exposure of their, opening of roof to the floor is kind of limited. So we'll be able to kind of provide some sort of screening tree, not too big, but it kind of grow up, and then we can probably be able to address the issue while the project is going. And then once it's done, and then, once we see each other, and then who knows, they become good friends and then say, oh, hi, we're kind of
I have a
waving each
question.
other. Yeah, I don't think it's, they are very nice gentlemen. My client.
That was your
yes.
time?
Yeah.
I have a question as it pertains to that matter. If you had to say, I realize that house, the neighbor's house in question is below you.
Right.
And so from the deck, what is the overall elevation difference in feet between, let's say, your lower level bedroom,
Uh-huh.
deck
Uh-huh.
elevation,
Uh-huh.
to more or less their backyard?
Or to their backyard?
Yes.
What
you had
I
to
see
guess.
from my elevation here, the lowest is, okay, the top.
While you're looking that up, I have a question for staff. I'm wondering, why did the variance end up all the way at city council, and why wasn't it not done administratively?
Well, it went through, the project was, oh, I'm sorry. As the homeowner had mentioned, it went, this project has gone through a hearing officer, planning commission, and city council. Now, I'm going to try to go through this as quick as possible. So the original request was to have a street front setback at 3 feet 10 inches. The hearing officer approved the project, however, conditioned that the street front setback be 8 feet as opposed to the requested 3 feet 10 inches. But the applicant felt that's not possible for the design, and it's discouraged by the Hillside Design Guidelines, and they appealed it to Planning Commission. Planning Commission overall sustained the hearing officer's decision to condition it to be 8 feet. Once again, it was appealed to City Council. Okay. City Council overturned the condition, however, sustained the approval.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for
I know.
explaining that.
Thank you for allowing me to explain that. Yeah.
Yeah, the lower level of our elevation is about 60 feet based on this the topo survey. The lowest, which is the valley of the channel, is 40 feet. So first floor to the bottom of the channel is about 25 feet difference, and I believe their house may be at about 20 feet above. So the elevation difference of our lower level, which is where the bedroom is, and then their level probably somewhere around 5 feet plus minus.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can I ask one more?
Sure, sure.
Did you guys look at alternative railings where it's maybe like solid railing or something, and maybe raise it up a little bit so you don't have like, so the view is kind of blocked when you're sitting on the balconies?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we can think about, some sort of kind of a little tickle blade or something, so when you look down, it's kind of blocked, but
Yeah,
you
with
can
some
see it
landscape
straight
or something.
or up. Yeah, we'll talk about it. I think it's something that we can work with planner staff.
And while you're still up here, horizontally, the dimension horizontally.
Yeah, I mean, if you have
had to go from your deck railing to their backyard, that horizontal distance, how many feet is it?
horizontal distance, that's now this is 95. Probably I would say about somewhere around 200 feet, 200 feet or more. Yeah, it's not right next to each other.
Right.
There is a,
I knew there was some distance, but I didn't quite place it. Okay,
yeah,
thank
I
you.
think the difference too looks like bigger than 5 feet.
could
The
be,
way it looks
could
to me,
be,
just
yeah, could be.
because of this. But I
I'm
think
just
he's
looking
thinking
up.
that it kind of comes up again as it goes up the other side, so he's.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's going down about 25 feet and it's coming up.
Yeah.
And their house is somewhere on the middle of the hill.
I think it's gonna be more like.
Because
20
they have access from the street. The street is
That's how it
also,
looks like. And we're talking this to
So
this.
that, right.
And just to put things in perspective, this is 30 feet, right? So, yeah. So
If you allow me to just chime in, the length of the building and its length is about 42 feet, 41 and a half. The length of the property is 111, so you kind of do the math there. Just to the,
40%.
yeah. So we're looking about 50, 60 feet away to the property line. I don't know how far away the neighbors' windows or their buildings are, but just to give a little bit of perspective on the site.
Okay. Thank you. I got no more questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, now we're going to close the public comment portion of the hearing and deliberate on this matter. Who would like to start first?
Don't mind
Valiant?
starting.
Mr. Swinner, please.
Yeah, so this is a unique hillside design because when I was looking at it, I couldn't quite place my arms around how you had made that driveway work and the setbacks work, because usually most of the hillside downslope homes end up being 3 stories, and it's very hard to get it done in a 2-story unless you have a really wide property, and yours is only 75 feet. So I think it was a smart design move to end up asking for that variance and obtaining it, and you have a very unique situation because of that right of way. Because the more you push the house out from the street, the more you have to go down in order to satisfy it, and then you have height issues, and it gets very difficult. So because of that, he's been able to create this kind of stepping design, which is actually part of the hillside design guidelines. And so what I do think are very positive about it is the balconies are stepping back as well, as you're kind of looking at it in section, which is again rare, right? Usually the building sets back, but the balconies kind of stay more or less aligned. So site plan-wise, orientation-wise, mass-wise, location-wise, I have no issues with the design. As you indicated, from the street side, it's a simple 1-story. And also the way you've articulated the sides and the rear as well, I think are well thought out. I do think that where the project could use some help is on the retaining wall on a lower level. It's quite big, and because of the width of the home, it's going to be very prominent. And so I would really encourage a lot of vegetation and landscaping, and that's probably a condition that I would suggest, to really blanket that wall with some higher rising vegetation, which not only will block the wall or reduce the mass, and at the same time will reduce the mass from the neighbor's house as well. I could also support, having some sort of a solid parapet system on that lower level, perhaps, instead of the railings that you've depicted. I don't think it's going to make that big of a difference. On the other side, when we're looking at it, is if you have solid railings, you add to the mass. And so if the neighbor, if you're really concerned about mass and looking at a building, the railings are much lighter as opposed to something mass. So
Something gotta give,
so,
right?
yeah, it's either one or the other. So I would, think mass-wise and bulk-wise, we're probably better off having it open the way you have it depicted, but I'd welcome some additional thoughts as well from my colleagues. But overall, I support staff's conditions, and I think it's well thought out.
Sounds good. Mr. Bellian?
Sure. I will have to agree with Mr. Simonian. I think I agree with every comment you made. It's a unique property and a unique design, and I think the architect did a very good job playing with the mass and orienting the site plan in a manner that reduces the mass. So I like the fact that the house is kind of tucked in, steps with the slope. So you really, like, from most areas, you don't see the 2-story volume. You just see like 1 story. And I think the articulation is there, the design and detail is there, the style is there. I mean, there's harmony between the material, and you look at that rendering and it just looks good. I agree with staff on their conditions, so I'm in support of their conditions. And in terms of the that retaining wall, I agree with Mr. Simonian. We probably need to add a condition to screen that wall as much as possible. And in terms of the balcony and the privacy issue, I totally understand where the neighbor is coming from, and I'm not as concerned with the mass for that part, because I think if I had to pick, I'll pick looking at some stucco or something versus somebody just looking at me the whole time. So even if we don't do the whole thing, even if we do like a couple major sections and you leave like in the middle a little bit of the railings just to break it so it's not one solid wall, I'm okay with that as well. But I think it's a nice project and it has my support.
Okay. So yeah, I will keep it short as well. The project is well designed. I understand the privacy issues. There's some workarounds I think that can be done there. I was concerned about the tree issue, and so I just want to clarify that. I have seen the communication in the arborist report, so you know, this is something that City Council has reviewed and approved, so we're not going to be really touching that, but I wanted to make sure that that's something that we didn't gloss over. And I'm in support of the project, so I'll ask for a motion and a roll call. Or after reading of the condition, after reading the conditions.
Yes.
Just to
Mr. Chair,
clarify,
oh, go ahead.
just clarify one, we inadvertently left a staff condition about the stone cladding in this edit, but we thought it should be struck. We were okay with the cladding as proposed. I haven't heard anything.
I thought the idea
Earlier-
was to reduce the store veneer cladding on the entry portion, correct?
Well, that was the original thought. We kind of rethought that and stepped back from it, but it didn't make it through this edit. It's up to you all to tell us.
I think it's a valid point.
Yeah, I do too.
Okay.
I had the same feeling.
Okay, good.
Okay.
So the idea is to modify that condition number 1 that deals with the stone
Well, we'll
veneer.
keep condition one
We'll keep it.
rather
Okay,
than
we'll
striking.
keep it, and then we're gonna add a new condition where we're gonna add new landscaping to further screen the retaining wall at the lower level.
Right, and then we'll also add a condition, I believe, to increase the opaque areas of railing, possibly mixing open railing with solid railing in a way that works with the design to enhance privacy, but not have solid railings all the way across. So,
It could also have like, 30 inches of solid and then a horizontal above it as well, where it's not as solid. It could be horizontal siding, which will reduce mass.
yeah, so we're open to many solutions there, but there's agreement on that?
Correct.
Right, good.
Okay.
With those conditions, I'll move to approve the project with 5 staff conditions and the 2 added conditions.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Roll call vote, please.
So I have a motion by Board Member Bellion and a second by Board Member Simonian. This will be roll call. Board Member Bellion?
Yes?
Board Member Simonian?
Yes?
Mr. Chair Charchian?
Yes.
Motion carries 3-0.
Okay. Let's bring up the next matter on calendar. If people are exiting, please keep it quiet. The meeting is still continuing. The next matter on calendar is PDR 1802-928-2651 Verdugo Road. And this is also Mr. Joe.
Once again, Mr. Chair, I'll approach the board to give a brief presentation. Before I go to my presentation, a public notice went out for this house to be 2,615 square feet. Minor edits were made to the project, so that's why you see in your staff report it being 3,063 square feet, which is a difference of 448 square feet. And I just want to show you where this is, and I'll just slide this over so it's a little bit easier to focus. One of the edits is in this hallway here. So he extended the hallway to connect to the bedroom here. And also, there, as you can see from the section drawing, there's a storage area in the one-car garage. So this area plus that hallway area, that's the difference. So before I go in there, I just wanted to point out that discrepancy really quick of that.
So what's the total square footage?
3,063 square feet.
Is there a survey of the property?
Yes, right here. Well, this is a topo. This is a survey right here.
Do you have a large survey? Because it's so unique, it's so long. So
Absolutely.
linear.
Is there anything that maybe I can answer you particularly, or you just wanted to look
I
at?
just want to orient myself better.
Perhaps maybe I can offer this to you and then you can answer it later on. Sure. Thank you. Thank you. So just moving forward, so once again, this is a two-story single-family home with a 394 square foot one-car garage, and also will have a 607 two-car garage that's detached. Just to go over the site, as you can tell, it is a highly irregular shaped lot that's bisected by the Verdugo Wash. So therefore you have this shallow depth, and elongated width along North Verdugo Road property. Just to go over, the property technically has two street frontages for street front. There's an unimproved street here, which is Don Carlos, and another street here, which is Del Valle, and it's shown on this property map here. By public works and by zoning code definitions, we still recognize these as street fronts, and we'll consider these areas along the property line to the south and the property line to the north as being the street front. Like I mentioned before, this is a highly irregular shaped property.
I mean, that site's so narrow anyway, so the setback doesn't really hamper them in any way.
And I'll go into staff's thought into the setback and how it affects the interface of North Verdugo. Once again, Verdugo Wash is to the west, and then to the east is the Verdugo Road to the east. Just to go into site planning, you know, the unusual site leads to an unconventional site plan. The zoning is designed with zoning compliant setbacks along the street fronts and the street side, which is 6 feet. Just similar to the previous case before you, even though it's a 6-foot setback, which is we consider the street side 6 feet, the edge of pavement is set back another 8 feet. So that right-of-way width, and they're not using that as part of their driveway. But that does give an appearance of it being set back further. It's still, regardless of compliant to zoning. Just moving to massive scale, you know, while this property is larger than the very few single-family properties within the 300 feet, staff feels that, you know, the site is receptive to the new massing and design concept because, once again, I'm going to point to it being a very shallow depth and a very wide property. The design is very linear, and we think it's appropriate, and we believe that the one-story proportions and the two-story proportions of the property are well modulated and balanced for this design. The only concern we have is as far as massing, is the height of the chimney. As you see here, we feel like it should be reduced at least to match or be below the two-story portions of the building. Quickly go into detail.
So the wash is on the west side?
The wash is on the west, correct. The north is facing this way.
There's an aerial on the TV screen if you'd like to take a look and see the actual extent. So here's North Verdugo, and then the wash directly to the west. So it would be this slender. Wow.
So just moving forward with the design and details, some of the finishes that they're proposing is just smooth shotcrete, white metal fascias over at the roof areas, and then also concrete screens, as you can see, that are along the facade. You know, the proposed dwelling is designed in a contemporary style, and staff feels it's appropriate for the unusual site. The other condition, other than just lowering the chimney height, staff feels the proposed material of the chimney is a polished steel. We're recommending that they investigate a different material that's not as reflective and to be impactful to the adjacent neighbors or even oncoming traffic if it's even possible for light. But those are the two conditions. And overall, staff recommends approval.
Do we have a landscape plan?
Yes, I have it rolled up. I'll get that for you. I think it might be in the packet as well.
And so you have Verdugo, right? And you have these gardens where the building breaks up, and then Yeah, floor-to-ceiling windows, or is that where the shotcrete, where that reinforced screen is occurring, I assume?
That's correct.
And so it's not as much of an issue landscape-wise, but they've screened it. I see.
Yes. Let me pin up, I was running out of space, and I can get you the landscape plan.
It's right here, it's in the
It's
package.
L1 on the last page, second to last page of the package.
And you said smooth shotcrete, do you mean just smooth concrete?
You know, I talked about this with the applicant, he can go into it further, but the way he described it, it's similar to just like how you do a pool when they do the shotcrete, but this will be not the concrete that you and I were probably originally thinking. Now, and we can talk about that with the applicant.
Okay, so the overall finish is, it's a concrete modern
Correct, yeah.
facade.
Yeah, the way that they're going to apply it will be similar, just how they do the pools, you know, the plastering.
Mr. Joe, I have a question. How, I see where the driveway is,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm confused by the grade at the driveway and the depictions of the rendering, especially the east elevation rendering. So can you kind of walk me through how a vehicle accesses
Yes.
this house?
Yes, so I'm going to reference the site plan here. So you have Verdugo Road, and you have a driveway here in which he has receding gates over here. So it will have a 7-foot, 2-inch setback from the gate, and it'll have an extended driveway, which will require an encroachment permit from Public Works as well. He has a driveway width between the two driveways, I'm sorry, the two garages facing each other of 35 feet. So there's areas for him to maneuver and hammer and turn and not just back out into the street.
But
Where is it?
my understanding of this lot
Mhm.
is that it is sloping significantly as you traverse the wide length of it. And in the renderings, as depicted, for example, here, I don't see a garage. I don't see a garage door. I don't.
The garage gate
here, it's
looks
not
like
depicted.
perforated screens.
Correct. The applicant has provided some section drawings of how this concrete screen is going to be. So he's going to have this gate, and he's calling out here as being a gate that will slide behind the wall here.
Okay.
So this is going to
All right.
be.
So are we digging that driveway then into? Are we going below grade for that? Are we?
Well,
The actual mechanism of a vehicle going through that area is what I'm trying to understand.
wait, correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's what he's trying to depict here. That shadow here is, and I think what you're getting at is the cross slope. So you have the street coming down,
Yeah.
and then you have another driveway that will go down to a lower area of the concrete paving over here. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
That's what, I'm looking for a topo map of some sort. I mean, I have the survey, but
I mean, even from the depiction, even from this wonderful model that they have, there doesn't seem to be a practical way to access that driveway from the street.
Okay. I'll further investigate that. I routed this out to other departments, and I'll come up with an answer for you as far as what the plans draw. But
Okay.
I believe, and maybe he can give some clarity with the finished floor area. Well, the finished surface here is 933. Top of curb is 935. So there is really a 2-foot drop from here to with that 14-foot span.
Okay.
But you could, I mean, there's some maximum slope that you could only have in a driveway. In the first 5 feet, you could only have a certain slope.
Well, it's in residential zones. It's up to 20%, but generally, it's in hillside areas. It can be, since this is a R1, it'd be 15%. So the first would be 5%. Half. It goes half, 7.5, and then 5%, I believe.
Do we have any kind of retaining walls or anything studied as far as how they're holding up any dirt in the back? or to the best of your knowledge? Are there any drawings like that?
No.
I think they're to the line of the existing. Okay, any other questions?
Not right now.
Should we go ahead and open it up?
No.
Brady?
I'm missing 2.2 on my package. Do you have 2.2 in yours?
No. I don't have a 2.2.
Maybe we could put up a full scale 2.2.
Okay. Do you want to open it? All right, let's go ahead and open up the public comment portion of the hearing. I have one speaker card on this project. No, I do not have. Okay, so applicant is Mr. Artem Golestian. Who's the architect on this project? Are you the architect? Okay. Oh, owner and architect, gotcha, that's why. But I don't have a speaker's card from you, sir.
Oh,
I don't know if I misplaced it, but please fill one out afterwards and go ahead and state your name for the record.
Artem Galestian. I'm the designer, builder, and owner of the project.
Okay.
Do you want me to answer your questions first, the ones you guys have?
Why don't we,
Would that
why
be
don't you,
easier
yeah,
and then I can move
yeah,
forward? or-
that's fine, yeah, go ahead.
As far as the garage goes, we checked all the slopes. I can't remember if we have it in the section drawings.
Do you want to come up and choose a point?
So we start sloping from the sidewalk here, even though it's in the public right of way, but once we cross the sidewalk, we bring the slope down to this point, and then we slope further into near the garage door. So we have more than enough space to meet the code.
Okay, I just didn't see
Sure.
it anywhere.
Yeah, I know.
And the curb cut you think is gonna be sufficient to get up to height?
Well, I'm just considering this. What do you mean by that?
So the curb cut, the curb cut has, if I'm not mistaken, a maximum height. You can cut the curb, right?
The apron?
The apron, the concrete apron?
Maximum width?
No, the maximum height from street,
Well, it depends how
To the
wide.
sidewalk?
right. I don't think there is.
When we
anything
did
there.
I honestly didn't even take into account what the apron requirement is. What I did is I took the elevation here, I just moved it to here, and then did the calculation.
Okay,
So I'm sure, I mean, we can.
all right.
Well, walk us through the project. It's extremely unique. There's a lot of facets to it.
Yeah,
So
so,
it'd be good to kind of get your take on how you came up with the site planning, orientation, et cetera.
sure. So the lot starts somewhere here. It's at 9 feet wide when it gets from here. And then it goes, reaches about 60 feet, more or less. And we wanted to place the living area in the wider section because that's where we have the parties, right? So, and then just, we didn't have much choice if we did, because we didn't want to go on the second floor. So pretty much it's just a shotgun house almost for the hallway. And everything is, I mean, if I've tried like 1,000 different variations, it's like living room here, that was like number one. We had to have it here. So we have this big open space for the living area. And then after that, you kind of, I wanted to keep the straight lines. And I had certain requirements for bedrooms. I mean, the bedrooms aren't even big at all. So these are like minimum sizes, minimum hallway size, and then barely fit the lap pool in there.
Is this the boundary of your, let's say, corridor right here? And then this dash line is more or less your canopy? Is that? looking
Yeah.
at? So it's just basically a slender, long corridor, the bedroom's off of it, and,
And
is there?
There's a lot
what's
that go-
happening in the backyard as far as?
well, this portion of the lot between our property line and the wash wall, which is a 10-foot wall down into the wash, this is county property, and we're pretty much not left with anything. But I've looked at all the neighbors; everyone's using this as a garden, you know. So and the county's happy with it because you're maintaining it. And then, but
So let me ask a quick question. So you have a lot of this open garden fountain spaces within the structure of the home. Is that to meet the green space requirement, or is that just a feature of the property?
So we exceed the green space requirement. The reason we have those is
Bring them.
one of the other issues with the lot, other than it being a weird narrow shape, is we have cars going 40, sometimes 60 miles an hour. So the use of the shotcrete and these concrete panels is just to protect us from 60 mile an hour cars. And I wanted the rooms to have private spaces, and putting the screens there protects the garden from noise, just cars crashing into it.
You know, and those are open to the sky, I assume, right, those
Yes.
gardens? So.
You want to take a look at the model? It'll really
Sure.
explain a lot of it.
Right, okay. Can you move the model actually over there after you're done presenting?
And then, as far as construction goes, for the shotcrete, we're building a house right now in Glendale where it was designed as a poured-in-place concrete house, but we re-engineered it and just shotcreted like a pool. And what you do is you just trowel it like you would trowel stucco, and then we're just gonna paint it, and it comes out just like stucco.
So what kind of finish is it?
Stucco, like a smooth stucco, you could call it. If you
It's
want to
concrete
compare
or
it.
stucco?
It's concrete. But, I mean, stucco is, I guess, so sort of concrete, right? So you just trowel it just the way you would stucco, and then
So it's a smooth concrete.
just smooth stucco. I mean, if you want to compare it to something.
Well, that's very different stucco and concrete, but you
Yeah.
have a smooth concrete that seems to have some sort of a color texture to it, right? White.
It's just painted white.
It's painted white, or the paint is inside the
Well-
concrete?
You could do it inside the concrete, but that takes the cost.
And have you, do you have a contractor in place? Have you started to look at cost estimating?
I'm a contractor. I'm gonna build it.
And you've looked into the cost associated with these concrete walls and concrete
Everything. I have a line-by-line item for every penny.
And why the tall chimney?
So, I haven't gone into that yet, but the diagram is, I think you guys have a chance to see.
Yeah.
You want to reference which page number it is?
Can't remember. I think it should be at the end, 4 point something.
Maybe,
Oh, there we go. So,
No, this way we'll get a manager.
so we're looking at A 4.1?
yeah, so we've designed a passive cooling system into the whole design of the house. We're gonna put,
Let's go to the board.
Podium?
Podium, yeah.
so, there's a, hold on, let me,
Here, you can borrow my copy.
Art, you have to stay right at the microphone now.
what is this for?
Whatever you want.
Just put it over this, still lower than.
Just for clarification, after reviewing the plans, I know he has section cuts over A2, 2.2, but they matched the section cuts over here on A 3.2, so that might have been an error. Yeah, the section cuts are behind that one.
Understood. Okay. Go ahead.
So the passive, like, cooling systems that we want to incorporate into the house is some earth pipes, which are gonna,
You're gonna have to speak into the microphone.
I'm used to leaning this way. So there's earth pipes buried underground, which are going to blow cool air. That's the cold is taken from the earth and into each bedroom. And the chimney plays into that, is where the cold air enters, and the chimney helps suck hot air out. So does the skylight above the living area. You can see it in the diagram there. It also acts as a chimney, but it's kind of, the reason it is the size it is to act as a chimney and as
So do you
exhaust,
actually
yeah.
need that vertical height in order to achieve that kind of negative?
Well, that's
and
the
positive
maximum height
ratio?
allowed. I would go higher because,
So it's more of an aesthetic kind of a, it's an aesthetic.
well, it's more than aesthetic because the higher I am, the more wind velocity you can get. So,
Okay.
Okay.
can I go higher?
Sorry?
Can I go higher? I don't think
If
I
you've
can.
got your maximum height, I don't think you can go
I
higher.
think it's the maximum. I don't know.
Well, you have to check with planning on that.
And the whole point of the material we're using, this polished stainless steel, is to make it disappear. So it's actually, no one's going to see it. And if you look at the model, you can kind of.
And you have these flat roofs. Walk us through the structural components. What are you envisioning as the main structure that's holding up these roofs? You have these thin roofs that are drawn on sheet A3.2, and they're very diagrammatic, and
You can point at the
So-
model and
Right.
tell us
and
what's what.
how are you holding them up? How are you draining them? How are you sloping them, etc.?
So the shotcrete walls, structurally, they act the same way as a poured-in-place concrete wall does. So, and then the decks above the first floor are all concrete decks. And it's just going to be a very thin waterproofing and kind of soil.
What's the thickness of the deck?
10, it might be 12, but I'm hoping it's 10.
12 inches of
Yeah.
concrete.
And the house that we're shotcreting now, that I was telling you guys about, is the same concept, actually.
Which is this going to be your house, or
yeah.
are you designing this?
No, it's for
someone
mine.
else?
And then these roofs are just wood frame.
He was gonna tell you if you're planning to sell it, you're gonna lose a
You
lot of
lose
money.
a lot of
Yeah,
money.
no one's selling this.
Okay. So
Nobody
you have-
wanted the land, so
So over
we
the
saved the money there.
living area, you have a wood roof, wood frame roof?
Yeah, wood frame is this roof and
And
this
also
roof.
the garage, the double height garage with the storage?
True. And kind of like a office workspace above. So the residential portion of the house, that's actually a house, it's just one floor.
I mean, but the way he's describing this thing is like 90% concrete, right?
More
That's the way
probably.
it seems to me, yeah.
Yeah, so I might as well do the other 10% and have a type 1 structure.
Throughout.
I could.
And as far as your windows, I assume there's some storefront kind of aluminum
Yeah,
windows?
aluminum storefront looking windows. Yeah.
I have no more questions for the
Okay.
architect, designer.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You guys want?
All right.
You?
So make sure to fill out a speaker card, sir, and then get it to me somehow. The speaker cards are there or around the corner. I have a speaker card from a Robert Moore on this project. Mr. Moore, you have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, board members. Robert Moore, M-O-O-R-E, for the record. And I think this project really has potential to bring a much-needed upgrade and attribute to the area. This lot, we've seen it for a while. It's a vestigial remnant of the flood control wash and Verdugo Road. And the thing that concerns me and us, our family, is the landscaping aspect of it. It's been barren. It's been well trodden by trespassers all the time. But the thing that kind of got us was initially there was an import of lots of vegetation. And initially we thought it was going to be a nursery. Kind of expensive property for a nursery. But in any event, the landscaping vegetation was allowed to die. And I'm wondering, is there a landscape plan for this project?
Yes, there is.
It's the last page on your packet. It's the last page on your
And it would be
packet. I'll
also
put it up,
available online.
enlarged.
So we'd like to know what kind of vegetation and landscaping. I've seen the model with palm trees. Hopefully they won't allow them to die this time
Of
around.
course. Sure. Would you like it looking north or south? This is looking south.
This is fine, this is great. Maybe a little farther down the road, yeah. Like this. Perfect.
You can see there's a couple of vestige plants remaining, but other than that, they were allowed to die, and we're curious about the landscape plan.
Okay.
The design is really something from kind of modern Art Deco, the way it's laid out, in my opinion. And I think it would be a great attribute to this otherwise vacant lot that's been pretty much overrun with trespassers and undesirable aspects. So if the landscaping is upgraded, upgraded and indeed maintained, we would certainly favor the project.
Okay, thank you.
I'll represent to you that I'm sure that there's a copy of the landscape plan online that you can reference by going
Up
to the
on the
city's
board.
website, and there's also up on the board behind me. Thank you, sir. Your time has expired. I don't see any other speaker cards.
Thank you.
Would you like a rebuttal, applicant?
Just want to address the dying plant.
Please come up here. State your name for the record.
Artem Galestian, applicant. We planted those, but the heat wave came and killed them all, so we'll replant everything. So,
If you'd like to speak, sir, on this project, you need to fill out a card. But you can come up, speak, and fill a card out later, and we'll verify if there's any other speakers that want to speak after your.
I'm Robert Kircher. I'm the general partner of the apartment house that's just south of the property. My question is, I just wanted to confirm that the building itself is going to be at least 50 or 75 feet away from our apartment house there.
I can't verify that from you, but I would estimate that if there is a street dedicated, area dedicated, as was stated earlier, that is going to be a wide space between the buildings.
I would think so.
Mr. Chair, would you mind if I?
Sure,
I
come on up.
think Mr.
Kircher.
Kircher was referring. He's the property to the south, which is the multifamily. Now I'm going to approach the board. To
No,
kind of
the south property?
Well, this is the north, and
Right.
then as it gets wider.
Yeah, it's on the
Right.
picture, the apartment building right there.
So he has a 25-foot setback to the closest part of his front entry on Del Valle. I looked at Del Valle and the base maps, and the right-of-way width of the unimproved street's 50 feet. So just from the width of the right-of-way plus the setback over here is already 5 inches. So I don't know how much
Feet.
further away.
Better be feet.
75. I'm sorry, 75 5 inches. That's what I think.
25 feet. 5 inches.
Yes. So I don't know how much further away Mr. Kircher's property is from his property line that abuts the unimproved right-of-way.
We don't know.
That answered your question, I think.
Okay. Yes, and we are a little bit concerned about the reflective material in the chimney as well.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any other?
Nope, that's it.
Thank you. If there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on this matter? Okay, because we allowed the speaker to interject after a rebuttal, I will have to offer you the rebuttal. You can accept, come up and address it, or you can waive, sir. I see a hand motion indicating that he's waiving. We're going to go ahead and close the public comment portion and open this up for deliberations. Who would like to start?
I'll start.
Okay.
In the 9 or 10 years I've been on this board, this is probably the most unique project that I've ever come across, and I think it all kind of stems from the site. So we have this extremely unusual, elongated, rectilinear remnant parcel, right? That's next to the wash. And so there are a lot of physical challenges of how you approach this design. And I'm going to kind of start off with the site planning of it. And just by the look of the drawing, the time you've spent on the model, the overall feeling that I'm getting is this is kind of a passion project. You know, you've been designing this for a long time. You've looked at it from all angles, and this is kind of your dream house and your dream home, and you're trying to create a very unique project. And so I appreciate that. I appreciate that as an architect. I appreciate that as a developer. I think those are all positive. And I think if you were to look at this from any other angle, it would not work out. You have to be extremely flexible when you're looking at a site like this. Because if you're not flexible, you're just not going to come up with any kind of a buildable square footage. Now, the overall layout, if I'm just looking at the model of the mass and the shape and the way the site plan has been designed and incorporated into the site, seems logical, you know, just as an overall layout. You know, how do you approach it? Where do you put your garage? How do you approach your garage? How do those driveways work? Where would you put your living space and that double height space? Now, once you get past that, though, you start to really understand how this building will be and how this home will be lived. And you're on a very busy street. You're on a very fast street. People are speeding by. They're going by. And so you're not going to have a lot of privacy at all. So you've kind of done one of the only solutions to you is you created interior courtyards, like, you know, like they do in Morocco and elsewhere, where from the street, you know, you just see a wall, but inside there are these lush courtyards. So concept-wise, I see the approach, and it kind of reminds me of a school project in a way, where it's like a thesis where someone has just gone about it with a lot of passion. Where I'm having some doubts is really compatibility of this long elongated building and this long elongated shotcrete white concrete building along Verdugo. And I'm having some thoughts as to the screening material, right? And you know, in essence, if you have, let's say, a green screening where it's just kind of a metal mesh that landscaping grows on, right? And so now you've kind of softened up a very ultra-modern white material with more of a natural screening product. Let's say, as an example, where you have horizontal wood that's stained, right? So warm material coupled with the concrete. But all of a sudden, you get into this white concrete building with the concrete screens. And unless it's done very well, unless those details are just spot on, it's going to be an eyesore. Unless it's done really well. And you're smiling, and I know you appreciate what I'm saying. And so the idea is for us to have enough details in front of us to understand how that building goes together, how those materials come together. And so I'm not there yet. I'm not seeing that level of detail. I'm not quite understanding how the green top roofs work, you know, how that slab works, how the integration of the window system goes into this concrete. But I do support the site plan. I do support the way it's laid out. It's a single-family home. It's a legal lot, and so you have a right to build on it. You're not going two-story in most of the building. You're just doing it in some areas. And so mass and bulk-wise, I don't have an issue. But because of the rectilinear design and the mass frontage of the building that you're creating, we need to make sure that the materials and the way they're kind of meshed together reduce mass and bulk and are compatible. And so those are my initial thoughts. I like the direction, but I'm not quite there with all the details yet of how it's all gonna go together. So with that, I'll kind of open the discussion, wait for my colleagues to provide, further feedback, and then we could have some dialogue.
Mr. Zania?
So I'm not gonna repeat what Mr. Simonian said. I'll just take it and continue and build on his comments. So I'm gonna start with, I'll say my comments later. I just want to start like, this is a beautiful design. This, everything aside, this is like a beautiful house. So when I received the package, I looked at this and I opened it and I saw how long the sheets, it wasn't the regular 11 by 17s we get. I said, uh-oh, that was the first thing. And then when I looked at the first rendering, for me, it looked like a commercial building. It had some kind of commercial building look to it, not a house.
I thought the same. I thought it was a commercial building.
So that was the initial thought. And then when I started digging deeper and I saw the site plan and I saw how it was laid out, I understood the direction you took. I agree with Mr. Simonian. I think that the site planning and the layout works, but the problem I'm having with this, if this was like if it was situated in Switzerland and it's in one of the forests and it just like you have that house and you have nothing next to it, it'll be awesome. It'll be a really nice design. But this location and having this on this busy street, it just doesn't seem it fits. It just doesn't fit for me. And I'm not saying the material. I think we need more information on the material, but I think just the length of the project is what's like. Had this been 2,000 square feet and not 3,000 square feet, and you lose that last portion, and you reduce now the proportion works better. But you have this one-story, not very tall building that's super long. There's something awkward about the proportion. That's the part I'm having a hard time with. And had you cut this and you remove that last part, I think the proportion starts working for you better. I think that's where I'm at. I don't know what to say, but I'm sure I'm sure you can take it to the next level. I think, in my opinion, I think it needs to get smaller. You need to pay attention again to the concrete. I mean, why paint it white? I mean, when people use concrete, they use it because you use it and that's the finished material. I mean, it just defeats the purpose to do nice, smooth concrete and then paint it white like stucco. Like, what are you getting from that? So these are my initial comments. I don't know what for Mr. Charshian.
So I'm actually very familiar with this lot. I visited the lot when it was for sale. And then I discovered that the property I was standing on was actually not for sale. It was the street, the thick white part on this side, and then that was over there. And I couldn't envision what was going to be built here. Looking at this project, it actually has a lot of the faults that you're pointing out to. It looks very industrial. It does span a long space, but I think that, but I disagree with the comment about it being situated in the woods or something like that. I think that the linearity here, the fact that it's so linear, fits because of the fact that this is that lot. This is this really long lot, and the house that's actually north of this one also has that kind of thin, long, look. But unfortunately, it's hidden behind a bush, and you don't get to see any of the articulations on it. And the interesting thing about this lot also is across the street is another lot that's not developed with a bunch of pine trees or Christmas trees. Sometimes they're or during the holidays they have that. So I don't think you're dealing with a traditional strip of land, right? So for me, the design actually works. Where I think it creates this problem is that there is no break in that design, right? Even the garage door is made to look like the garden doors or the garden screen walls. And so it's almost too uniform. And that's where that's where I have the problem with, is that uniformity, I think, does need to break. And I think if there's a break, the building works much better, right? And it does look industrial. My first view of it, I thought, are we building some sort of, substation or something like that, but that is, but it does work. I mean, for a home with a break, I think for this lot, I think it works. I think it needs some fine tuning. I agree with the comment. The painting white over concrete doesn't seem to make sense to me. Maybe having a more industrial look makes sense. I've seen some good examples of this type of architecture in Palm Springs, and there's definitely more unique palettes that are incorporated versus just solid white all the way across. But those are the main issues. And then the other issue I have with it is I would like to see, and haven't seen any issues with, how they're gonna do the footings and things of this nature on this property, because it's next to the wash, and I believe this is a lot of fill from when, and I don't see any of that information on here. Just standing on that lot, which I've done, it feels soft, so I would be concerned about that as well.
Yeah, well, just kind of judging by the comments that have been made, I think there is some consensus in that the building needs to be broken up, that it needs to break up the mass. I think there's some support from this side, at least, of perhaps making it smaller, perhaps integrating different materials for your screening, etc. But in general, I think my biggest question at the moment is there enough information for us to move forward with conditions? And I'm not seeing it myself. I think this is more of, we need to get some more clarity, and it needs to come back because of the length of it and the size of it. I think the way he goes about addressing the comments and solving the design issues, I think will make a huge impact. So those are my thoughts, at least.
I agree.
Mr. Platt, maybe, do you want to go over maybe some thoughts that have been put on paper so far?
Sure.
As far as comments?
The thing I need clarification for, sheet A4 does show some details. The screens are going to be glass fiber reinforced concrete, kind of grid panels. It shows they're set into notches or various support structures to hold them up. So if you could give us a little more clarity about what you would look for beyond that.
Personally, I'm not sold on the concrete screen, as I indicated. I think unless it's done in a very methodical German sort of construction finish quality that you would see at a museum, it's not going to look good.
But GFRC is a cast material, so
yeah, it's still,
depending on the quality of the mold, it should come out very crisp and clean.
I still prefer, as I think one idea of breaking up the mass would be to have a warmer material for your screening, as I indicated. Whether it's a screen, natural screen wall with natural vegetation or some sort of other material, but that, without designing his house for him and without prescribing the exact materials, I think I had an issue with just the monotonous concrete look. So
It'll help them cost-wise too.
And so I'm not as concerned about, oh, look at sheet A4 and there's some details in there about the concrete.
Okay, I thought you were saying you couldn't understand.
I wasn't sold on the material to begin with.
I understand it. And then there's, as you mentioned, there's consensus to break up the mass, and I was wondering if that would, Mr. Bentley, and if that would make you happier with this at its existing square footage, or if you still think it needs to be smaller.
I think that would help.
Okay.
I still believe, I'm not gonna tell you how much, I still believe some square footage need to go away just to get the proportion right.
Or
When you
You-
break it up.
Or you break it
maybe-
up, let's say if that driveway gate turns into something different, you know, as opposed to that screening material, or if it really differentiates itself in height or whatever, or it moves behind it or even goes away, now all of a sudden you have a very different scenario. You don't have this long elongated building.
Yeah, the portion of the house next to the north is actually detached, so perhaps that could be treated differently.
Right.
Still have some sort of
Sure.
gate to give security, and then the house would be itself with that as an
Right.
appendage. So we could work on a variety of ideas with the architect if you choose to approve it tonight. The other comments, that it's too uniform, I think we're addressing that through the siding material. It sounds like there's concern about painting this. And when we talk about this not being compatible, which I think, I didn't get the sense that there's total consensus on that. Am I hearing that you'd like this to look like a raw concrete look, or just maybe a different color than white that softens it? Or
I think in
it could be
general,
an integral color in the shotcrete also.
I think, you know, he's got to come back and give us some other options based on our comments. But if I were to design a concrete home that I have and I actually live in, I keep it concrete. You know, I don't quite understand the notion of, we're gonna shotcrete this, we're gonna create a smooth concrete, and then we're gonna paint it white. Doesn't really make sense, right? So
For maintenance, yeah.
everything, I mean, exactly, building gets dirty, it starts having streaks, it just, 500, I don't know how many feet of it, so that's what I think, a clarification on your question, Mr. Platt.
Okay, so we'll talk about material choice and painting or not. And Mr. Churchian mentioned the footings. I don't know if that's germane to your discussion ultimately, but there will be structural drawings prepared, and Building and Safety will review those. Would that satisfy your concern?
It's the standard, this is not hillside necessarily, but it's the standard that if there is issues with the footings and structural, it's going to affect the design, and then at that point, you're going to have to send it back.
You know, I think as a consideration, it's a good idea to get a soil report. You're gonna, okay, good. Well, we can't have cross-communication, but he's saying he has it, so perhaps he could provide us
We'll
with a
submit that,
copy.
yeah.
And it might be, again, as a consideration for them, for that, for this site plan to be integrated into the soil report, which I assume it would be. And for there to
So-
be some,
And that's
comments.
probably not gonna affect the design. I mean,
Well,
it would
so
affect-
it sounds like from your comment that maybe the soils report, if it is available,
We'll tell you.
will be one of the issues. Will be my only thing other than the breakdown of the garage area. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Platt.
That's pretty much everything.
yeah, I had also mentioned that, he had mentioned concrete roofs. And from what I'm seeing in some of the landscape drawings, that these are green roofs, landscape roofs. So I think those need to be detailed. We need to understand
Waterproof.
waterproofing, how he's sloping them, and there were some comments made also that we have a concrete home that's, I don't know, 85, 90%, whatever it is, concrete, and then we have some wood portions. And so there were some thoughts there as well. So overall detailing of how he's sloping these roofs, how the materials are working, I think.
Well, we'll get details and sections of the roofs. Is the wood roof an issue if he chooses to go forward with that, or?
No, but it seems odd, but.
But we
just-
can
just
build
tell
Mr.
us.
Simone-
sections of that also.
Mr. Simone, so I understand. There is what I understand to be a roof detail on A4 number 7. So you're looking for something more specific than that?
Well, we have overall, I think, yes, without going into specifics, I
Here it
think
is.
as vague as the drawings are, Mr. Tarchian, in my opinion, yes.
Well, that's why I defer to you on those types of things, but I just wanted to understand, because I was looking at this, and for me, it says waterproofing, so, but I'm not the architect on the board, so. Anything else, Mr. Platt?
Unless I missed something, no?
Okay. So I will go ahead and close deliberations if there's no other comments and open it up to a motion. Is there a motion?
So what is the consensus return for redesign?
I would support a return for redesign with the conditions as we stated.
I thought we can condition it, but I feel that you both are leaning towards redesign, so.
Just seeing how, what it's like.
So, should I make a motion? Yeah, so I move to return the project for redesign with the conditions as stated.
Second.
Roll call?
So I have a motion by Board Member Simonian and a second by Board Member Benlian to return for redesign with the stated conditions. This will be roll call. Board Member Benlian,
Yes.
Board Member Simonian,
Yes.
Mr. Chair Charchian.
No.
The motion carries 2-1.
Okay. All right, moving on to the last matter on calendar for this evening would be PDR 171-0856, 3338 Deer Creek Lane.
Would you mind, forgive me, Chairman Charchi, would you mind giving me just 2 minutes to?
Sure, we're taking an official break.
However you wish. It should just be a moment or so.
Okay, we're just gonna stay on course, but they're gonna need about 2 minutes as they walk around behind me, and I will need time to organize these speaker cards. Please, yeah.
I was gonna say $500-600 with a couple other.
Did you guys see this one? Seen this one yet? Your files?
I've seen it before.
So, material board and letters. Yes. Thank you. Oh,
That was a staff condition, so that's gonna stay as a condition, and then we'll talk about it next time.
hey.
I'm gonna give this back to you
Fill out a
now.
postcard?
Mr. Joe
Yes,
gave us these from the
I know from
city
the
file.
previous one, thank you. Okay, Chairman Charchian, board members, the last case on this evening's agenda is a new single-family home to be located at 3338 Deer Creek Lane. It's a proposed two-story, approximately 3,500 square foot single-family residence with an attached 3-car garage on a vacant 7,800 square foot hillside lot located in the R1R zone. This is a first-time submittal for final review. This particular site had a previous proposal that went before the design review board 3 times and was ultimately denied. It was then appealed by the property owner, and it went to city council, at which point the city council went ahead and upheld the design review board's denial. Several of the points were that the house wasn't adequately depressed into the hillside, and that the floor-to-ceiling heights were not lowered. So the applicant has now returned, and this was denied by city council back in March of 2014. So this is a new application. It's very similar to the old one. They have made minor modifications to try to address council's and the design review board's conditions. Okay. The city council staff report, as well as all the previous plans and the previous design review board records of decision, were included as part of your packet. So you were able to go ahead and see the previous proposal versus the current proposal. But again, this is a brand new single-family residential home and application. Project site is located in the Oakmont View subdivision, which is a newer subdivision within the city, primarily developed in the 1980s. The homes in this neighborhood are typically two-story in height and rather larger homes, typically also in the neoclassical style. This is one of two remaining vacant lots in the subdivision. So,
I didn't know there were any.
Pardon?
I didn't know that there were any.
Just two, and this is one of them. So going on to site plan, the proposal is very similar to what was previously designed in the center of the lot. It's rectangular or square in shape. There is a downward slope along the rear of approximately, well, the overall slope of the lot is 12.5%. So it's not really visible from the front, but it does slope towards the rear of the lot. They are making use of that by having an outdoor patio deck and then tiering it off at the rear. The 3-car attached garage is comprised of 2 parking spaces and then a tandem 3rd-car garage, which is very typical for the area. Majority of the homes have this type of configuration, and the landscaping is drought tolerant throughout. Now the question being in terms of mass and scale, as mentioned, the house is 3,500 square feet approximately. It is approximately 1,350 square feet less than the average size within the 300-foot radius. And the proposed floor area ratio at 0.45 is at the maximum permitted by code, but it is lower than the average floor area ratio in the surrounding neighborhood, which for some reason has a legal non-conforming average of 0.63. So
might have been downgraded.
it probably was downgraded from the 1980s for some reason. So, but when you compare the floor area ratios and the sizes of the surrounding homes, it's smaller than the average floor area ratio and also size of the home itself. The house, when you look at it, it's designed in a neoclassical style. It's somewhat boxy. The style itself sort of leads to a grandeur type image. However, again, with that comes the mass and scale. It's somewhat imposing. However, many of the homes in this particular neighborhood have very similar design detailing, and several of them are very similar boxy neoclassical styles. So when it comes to the overall comparison of the neighborhood average, it's within the area. Typically, staff does not recommend or have support of boxier neoclassical styles. This is only in regards to this particular neighborhood that we feel it might be compatible. Okay. The overall height. Now that was a main point of contention in the previous appeals before the design review board and city council, was the overall height. When you take a look, and the applicant submitted this scheme, you'll note, and also in the street view images, many of the homes are depressed, and there is a topographical change heading from, in this case, east to west, sort of slightly going down in topography. several of the homes have depressed garages and depressed driveways. And so there is concern also with the boxier typed adjacent structures. Is this compatible or is it not compatible? Previously, the applicant, or I should say the property owner, was unwilling to depress the house and also unwilling to lower the floor to ceiling heights. So in this particular application, the applicant, the architect, has come back. When you take a look and compare what was previously presented to the Design Review Board and to City Council versus what is currently proposed in the plan. So this would be City Council 2014, current proposal obviously 2018, a number of years later, but the overall height is somewhat the same because at this point they are proposing a 32-foot overall height, and that's because of the rear yard sloping down. And so at the front you see a two-story element, however at the rear, because of the retaining walls and the slope topography, it has a greater overall height based on that, where it comes out of the ground. In this case, they have lowered the overall floor to ceiling heights of the second story, and those were lowered from 10 feet in the previous proposal to 9 feet in the current proposal. The previous proposal had 11-foot floor to ceiling heights on the first floor. They've lowered them to 10.6. However, the Design Review Board previously and City Council all reiterated they wanted 10-foot floor to ceiling heights. So they've reduced the floor to ceiling heights, but not to the 10-foot that was identified in the previous records of condition. Okay?
And you said they pressed it as well?
Yes, and in this case, the applicant has shown that the previous overall finished was at 519, and the current proposal is at 517. So the overall building has been depressed into the site by 2 feet.
And then another 1.5 feet, so it's 3.5 feet.
Not,
Difference.
not really, no. So just from where you see it from the street, instead of being at 519, with the first would be what essentially the street front setback would be approximately 23.9. Now you'll see an overall street average. Actually, at this case, and that is going to have to be explained by, because they're showing it at 23.9 as well. But there's, according to their diagrams, they were showing it that the overall height would be depressed by 2 feet. So that is something that staff is recommending the board make sure to have a surveyor on site when and if this project moves forward and is constructed, that top ceiling height or the parapet height be determined and verified by a surveyor.
What is that diagram again? You were explaining it and then we got sidetracked for a moment.
Okay, so this particular diagram shows the two adjacent homes and cross sections of the home. So again, there was discussion previously, how does the mass and scale of the home compare to the adjacent structures? This particular diagram was submitted so that based on the proposal, you'll notice the overall top would be at I'm sorry, I apologize because it should actually be 517, not 1517. So it would be 517, 517. So it's essentially the same height as the adjacent structure that's on the lower building pad to the east. And however, it's still taller than the adjacent structure on the west.
So you mentioned that in 2014, City Council had made some recommendations or conditions or some comments, one of which was the height of the 10-foot ceiling heights, reduce the building height by 2 feet, and what else?
They didn't say reduce it by 2 feet. There was just, essentially City Council upheld the denial by DRB.
I see.
And several of those
Same
conditions.
conditions stay.
Correct. And
No
so,
new conditions were added.
correct, no.
I
It
see.
was just a
It's
flat-out
the-
denial.
The depressing and the height.
It was the depressing and the height, so,
And the original conditions I know are in here someplace.
correct. They were part of the city council staff report, which I believe was your last attachment. So,
So,
and I'm going to look to the architect to provide clarification regarding that, because based on the numbers right here, there was allegedly a the overall project was depressed 2 feet, so. But going back to the last item that was detailed in your staff report was the design and detailing. I'm not sure what more needs to be said. It's a very classically influenced design. It's pretty consistent all throughout. They
The
have
neighborhood.
throughout the neighborhood. In this case, they're proposing a stucco basalt tile at the base. Now, the applicant wanted me to point out to you that these printouts do not represent the color. Please refer to the color material board with regards, because it definitely is much more of a beige than it is not this type of green. Yes, so please refer to the color material boards. But aside from that, they have cornice at the roof line. They have arched wrought iron doors, light concrete moldings. They have shaped windows over the entry, light concrete balustrade and piers, ornamental detailing. And so the ornamental detailing and its placement on the building definitely helped to provide a unified and somewhat authentic appearance that's consistent with the proposed style of the building and is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood structures. You'll notice here that this 1.5 foot tall entryway has been modified in this and somewhat lowered in regards to some of the conversations or discussions regarding the monumental appearance. I'm not sure how successful that is at this point in time, because now staff commented it's a little bit out of proportion with regards to the overall look of the front facade. But still, they are moving forward with this particular project. The overall color scheme, again, it sort of accentuates the mass and the boxiness of it, but it is very consistent with that neoclassical, classical architectural style, and many of the homes in the area are very similar in color as well. Staff had a number of conditions. If you'd like, I can read them into the record, but they are part of your staff report. If there are any other questions.
Can you please go over the conditions?
One would be to reduce the ceiling height to 10 feet to comply with the DRB and council direction with the previous one. Was to also recess all windows from the wall and substitute the sliding windows and doors on the front elevation with casement windows and French doors. So again, forgive me for not mentioning that earlier. They're proposing all sliders. It would be much more consistent to actually have casement windows. And that only fiberglass or aluminum windows be used. Nope, not final. Lower the second floor octagonal window and consider redesigning the shape and size of this window and that general area to be more proportionate to the recessed central portion above the front entry. Ensure that all trim, molding, and cornices be light concrete and not foam molding. Match the garage, last but not least, but match the garage door color to the lighter molding trim or the darker basalt tile to provide a more of a contrast. And then we do want to reiterate that there be a surveyor verifying the overall height of this building to ensure that the reduced 2-foot dimension is met.
And I was unable to locate the original DRB decision from before. Can you give me a copy?
If you don't mind taking a look at, do you have your
here.
staff report? Correct, it's in there. So if you look under the last page.
Oh, it's hit. Oh,
Correct. It's
kind of stapled on the side so you
It's
can
in
know.
the, it's in
got
the staff reports that were included.
I found it.
And then these would be
On page
Okay.
6. Please.
So these are the two conditions that were not met by the previous proposal, and this is why the board went ahead and denied the project. So they were denied because they reduced the ceiling height to 10 feet from 11, and the building garage should be depressed lower than the proposed in a manner that will not create a sunken appearance, but allows the building to follow the topography of the lot in a sensitive manner.
And so there must be some hesitation by applicant in lowering it of all these repeated effects. Do you know what it is, and have you?
This is something that we've been discussing all along, and so they decided to move forward with only a 2-foot reduction. And so I'm going to leave that to the architect to explain.
And so were these the only two conditions that were
Those were
part
primarily-
of the
correct.
last DRB here?
That were not met.
That
correct.
were not met?
So what happened was,
But the disconnect I'm having
Mhm.
is that the design changed.
they went ahead and changed the design as well.
And
So
so-
these design changes were not required by the applicant from the previous council review. This is purely a decision made on behalf of the
Voluntarily kind of.
voluntary design.
Understood. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any other questions for staff? Let's go ahead and open up the public portion of the hearing for this project. The first speaker card is from Garo Nazarian, the project applicant. Mr. Nazarian, please come up, state your name for the record.
Good evening, Karan
good evening.
Nazarian. The project, it has been presented to you nicely by the Villia, but I want to clarify on the previous design review board and the city council, they were talking about maximum, some council members about foot and a half, or maximum 2 feet reduction of the building height. And in that time, the garage and the building pad, it was not depressed from the street level. And it was discussion that is a customary in that area that the building pad is lower than the curb side, curb level of the street. Because of that, I'm showing that the color diagram for you. The red houses, it shows the buildings. It has been built, the finished floor, building pad above the curb level, and the green buildings lower. So previously our building pad was the same level of the curb, but and it was just, if you check the site plan, it was just a straight, entering from the sidewalk into the house. But now I am depressing that by stepping down, and I lowered the second floor ceiling by to answer the comment of the previous meetings and the city council, but the owner hesitate to drop the first floor ceiling below 10 feet 6 inches. But in total, I depressed the house, and and I am compatible with the neighboring buildings.
So you depressed the slab 2 feet?
2 feet, yeah.
And you reduced the second floor by 1 foot?
By 1 foot.
So it got reduced by about 3 feet?
Yeah, and the parapet height, I can change the parapet wall around the roof, maybe by another 6 inches to give you that 6 inches lower. The building design almost has not been changed. It's the same thing, because even on previous design review board, even in the first or second board meeting, the board members, they were willing to approve the building design, just the condition, the lowering the building, pad, which was not acceptable in that time by the owner. But the building design, in total, there was no comment on it. They were willing to approve it because, as William mentioned, and if you check the neighboring buildings, it's compatible and is not a big, huge building. They are buildings about 8,000 square feet in the same size lot. In previous code, the side setback were just 5 feet. Now it's 10 feet. But we are complying with all the required codes. There is no variance or any other permit required. And I think by depressing that 2 feet, I responded to all the comments. And I did review the comments of this board. I don't have any problem, just the issue is that lowering the first floor height below 10 feet 6 inches, I would like to keep that 10 feet 6 inches.
Can you explain the hang-up on those 6 inches?
I can't because it's not for me, it's the owner's issue,
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We'll ask.
Any other question?
Yeah, I have a question. So, when I'm looking at sheet A8, and you're showing your top of curb at, there's only a few inch difference really between, your finished floor and the top of curb. So,
Can I approach?
yes, please.
Looking to this section, this is the street level.
And where is that taken? On the plans, if you would?
On the plan, it's, let me go from here.
Okay.
That is, I have these steps
Right.
going down.
Yeah.
Just I'm going down, but because of the drainage issue, to keep the water away from the building, from that point to the building, I have a 2% slope going up.
Garo, would you mind speaking up a little bit? We can't
Okay.
hear what your comments.
Yes, I was telling that there is a
So, but
2%.
overall, you've come down 4 steps.
4 steps.
I see.
And
And then how much had you come down before?
nothing.
I see.
It
Okay.
was level.
That's the depression.
I was
that
trying
is
to,
the
and the
depression.
rest because the street is
Yeah,
sloping.
yeah,
that's
it's a
why.
slope.
That was tricky because it didn't show the depression on that section. Because it's taken.
Yeah, because
Well,
even the street
yeah.
is
The street
sloping.
is
Yeah,
sloping,
sloping. Yeah.
And what are some physical difficulties where instead of, let's say, 4 steps, you have 6 steps, let's say, where you push it down further, because that seems to be the overarching comment, right, along the years, everybody said, push it down, push it down. So what are some physical problems that are preventing you from doing that?
Actually, there is no physical difficulty to do that, but I responded to the comments that most of the board members or city council or board members, they were talking about even foot or 18 inches.
They said 2 feet. You went
I
2 feet.
I went to 2 feet down, depressed it 2 feet just to give an end to this discussion.
Understood.
And of course, as I'm showing here, these 1, 2, 3, 4 buildings in the same side of the street, the finished floor is above the curb level.
I understand, because you mentioned it before, I
Yeah.
understand. What prompted you to change from that design to this design?
Just maybe during all these years, and having discussion with the owner, we're checking other buildings, just it's a very minor changes. It's not a really major thing.
I think the print is just maybe a bad print. That's why it looks
Because
completely
today,
different.
I received a call at 4 o'clock that the color elevations is missing. Just I sent it quickly to print the colored elevation. They couldn't match, my rendering colors with their printer, so the print it came out. But it's
But
mostly
should
it's
it
the
be?
same thing.
Should it look like that?
Yes, and the color board is the same that we used there. You see, this is the
color board.
French vanilla.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sir.
Chairman Charchian, I would just like to make note that one of the conditions, I apologize, was listed in the analysis portion of the staff report on page 5, which it does state that staff is recommending the board condition that the garage be depressed with a sloped driveway. It appears it did not make it to the itemized list of conditions.
Let's
at
go
the
ahead
back.
and add it.
So we would like to make sure that that is added as well, so it would be a further depress.
And
Yeah,
And
that was a major point of
That was-
discussion in the
forgive me.
earlier hearings in terms of when the board was asking to push the house down. We recognized that there would also be a maximum point we could push down to because of the driveway slope.
We don't have a section in the current set of drawings that helps us understand that, so that would be something that would be useful.
So yes, it would be the condition that was listed on page 5, but not included at the list of conditions at the back of the staff report. And also, as forwarded to the design review board members, we received one letter in opposition to this particular project from Mr. Armin Avazi, which obviously was distributed to all of you with.
We have it, thank you.
And you have it in your case file. And I received a number of telephone calls also in opposition to this project from surrounding neighbors that were obviously concerned, having been through the process with the previous design review and city council appeal.
Okay, thank you so much.
And one quick question. Vilya, can you confirm that the only issues that they had in the previous design meet, you might have mentioned it, I missed it, that were the depression and the height, and they were gonna approve it?
Now, I was not the case planner for this particular project during that time, but based on the previous staff reports and plans and records of decision, the two conditions that were included in the city council staff report that were not addressed and the reasons behind the board's ultimate denial of the project were twofold. One was to reduce the overall height for the floor to ceiling for the first floor from 11 feet to 10 feet. And then the second one being that sinking the overall house and sloping the driveway to lower the overall height as seen from the street. So those were the two items that ultimately led to the denial.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to our next speaker, Sergey Soroyan, who's, come on up. You filled out a speaker card. Would you like to speak? Come up to the microphone, state your name for the record. You're the owner of the property. And what is the time? 3 minutes.
Oh, no, 3 minutes?
Yes.
Well, my name is Hello. Nice to see you guys again.
Your full name, please.
My name is Sergey Soroyan, and this is 6 years now. I've seen Arsimonian here. This is the first time I've seen Sevan, Benyan, and so first time seeing him, Churchill. But this has been a project that we have established to build 20 years ago. 20 years ago, 1998. Now I'll go down. I prepared a speech for you, but I thought I had 5 minutes. But I'll still go with it and explain where we stand on the whole issue. I know how you guys mentioned about what's the hang-up with the height. Well, that's the main hang-up. That's the main hang-up. Even right now, when I spoke to my architect, I did not want to go more than 1 foot on the house, below the house. I was against it totally. He convinced me, sir, let's do this. This is what they wanted before, and this is what we're going to do. And you know what? This is very dear to me. Some people are quitters, some are not. I'm not a quitter when it comes to this. This has to be built. 20 years we had this property lot, and here I am today going through the same process over again. I went through 3 DRVs, 1 city council meeting, and I was very adamant, still am on the height of a house. I have a smallest house on the lot. Smallest, tiniest, look at this. Sometimes I wonder, what is this? What am I building? But this is not a matter of principle for me. You see what I'm saying? This is why I'm doing this. I have kids. I'm 38 years old. My daughter's 18. My son is right here. He's anxious to see this house built. So am I. But I prepared my speech today to make a speech here. See, I want to talk in facts. I mean, people could complain, so I don't like this, I don't like that. I'm not here to complain. I'm not here to point fingers. I never complain to anybody about any of these issues. I have factual evidence. I have a briefcase standing over there from city council hearings, all in verbatim, all statements, what was said, what was done, what was the debate about. You had some issues, Mr. Benlian, about the height of a house. If that was the only reason why we're here today, yes, that's the only reason why we're here today. It's very dear to me. I mean, when we bought this house, CCNR was in effect. CCNR was in effect in regards to this house. Most of these people here are trying to complain about the whole issue. Their houses are 80% of our lot. And I have a statement here from a city councilor. Because it's unfair to this guy. He has a size of 25% to 30% of a lot, and people are still complaining about it. And now when I look at the whole issue, one house is about 8,000 square feet. One is about 500 things. Mine is the tiniest house. How else can I build this house to construct it to optimize square footage? I mean, it has to be this type of structure to make sure that I have some kind of square footage. I applied for variance also. City council told me it's unfair to this guy. He should get some kind of let him apply for variance to kind of meet the criteria of an entire neighborhood. Because when you say compatible, I'm not compatible to a neighborhood. I'm the tiniest thing, like a shack house, compared to everybody else. People are not used to seeing that house over there before. 20 years that I know, it has been uninhabited. And people are so like open to seeing open space over there. I don't blame them. It's a park, probably. Recreational. I don't know. People want to, but it has to be built. It will be built because, I mean, I probably 6 years I'm into this. We're here at the DRB today right now, and I applied December 2000. I started December 2016 for DRB. And we had 3 planners. Rabbit, one was here, then Roger, and you came after Roger. So I've been waiting for a year and a half to come here. And here I am, and then recently I had a proposal to postpone it again. I'm like, I can't wait anymore. I mean, I cancel all my trips, vacations for this DRB because I have to be here. And I work, I mean, like everybody else does. So all my efforts are put into this. And I really appreciate all you guys could do for us. I mean, I know you guys have you guys see your work a lot, you guys see a lot of cases, but this has been a case that's been going on for a long, long time. And I never liked the suppressed look of a house. I hate it. I cannot stand it. Nor, I mean, and when I told my architect, I don't want to go at all, he goes, let's do 2 feet. I'm like, no, 1 feet only. He's like, no, let's do 2 feet. This is going to meet the satisfied criteria. He budged me into it. And even though I still hate it, I'm still okay, fine. Let's do this like that. It's fine, that's what you want. But there's no way. I mean, I hate these steps when you walk into their houses, they go straight elevation. I mean, that's how it is. But when I walk into my house, what is this, basement? I hate the basement feeling. I mean, if you're going to build something, do it with passion so you don't have to sell it somewhere else. I'm not planning to sell this. I never sold any in my lifetime. I'm 38 years old. I'm very successful in my professions. I never sold. I mean, I have businesses on brand. I have a pharmacy. I run. I mean, I do everything. I never sold anything. I like to multiply. I like to do big. I like to improve. I like to help the community. With me and my brother, we have a business on brand. We help the Glendale community a lot. We always support the community in everything we do.
Okay.
So basically,
I was advised that you're 5 minutes up. Finish your statement, please. I thought you had a timer.
5 minutes are up?
Oh, it had gone
It was
up.
up.
I didn't hear the timer go off. I apologize.
But
You were so impassionate that we were listening and didn't hear the thing. Thank you so much.
Take care. God bless.
Okay. Arthur Sargosian. Okay. Come on up. 3 minutes. 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Let's get that
Hi, how's it
timer.
going? My name is Arthur Soroyan, Sergey Soroyan's brother. I just want to get this project built. It's been about 6 years. We've been through a lot. I look at all the properties next to us. One's 8,000 square feet, one's 4.5. All we're asking is for a 3,500 square foot house to get built. We did reduce the height by 2 feet, which is what the chair board wanted, and we just need to get it approved. I heard like she stated, Vilia stated that the neighbors called and we got a couple complaints. 6 years ago, I went around the whole block. I got over 20 letters signed saying they want this house built. So it's kind of weird how people change their mind. We turned in those letters. You guys should have it on file. And that's about it on my end.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
David Hartunian.
Hello, David Hartunian. I'm speaking on behalf of the ownerships in the immediate area. I've done so the last 3 times, and actually have a petition opposing the height of the project by 10 homeowners in the area. So, and just want to reiterate that this is nothing personal. We don't mind the applicant building his house. We respect his dream to do so. That's fine. We've just want to say again that the actual height of the home has been the main issue for all the neighbors in the immediate area. In fact, the structure that's built now that's supposed to be a mock-up of the height is actually on the grade of the homes in that area. The home, of course, to the north is lower. His is higher than the home next to him, which is supposed to be higher than his home. So regardless of what he's trying to build, what the size of the square footage is, the main point here has been for him to recognize the overall height of the project is what, the only point we've ever brought up and the neighborhood has ever brought up. And, this is the third time that we've gone and addressed this issue. And we don't understand why the applicant is willing to depress his home to what is accurately reflected on that side of the street. Of course, he may be speaking about homes on the opposite side of the street or have a lower grade to the home because they're on the higher portion of the street, on the land side and not on the view side.
Not on the hillside.
Right. So they're not on a hillside. So we don't understand why the homes next to both to the right and left of him have depressions. We understand his personal feelings in the matter and that he does not like the depression in the home. And there are rules for this, and there's a conformity issue.
But they're depressing, but the current
They are
design
depressing, but still, it doesn't really reflect in the overall height. So if you do have a surveyor go by and see the development proposed, you're going to see something that looks awkwardly higher than the building to the upslope of it. So how can this be allowed if the building to the upslope is lower than their home? Or it doesn't look proper. And, I know the city council has disapproved this, and we've spoken on this behalf for the immediate people in the neighborhood. How can 10 people have the energy to actually deny somebody to build a home? These people all have lives, they have personal lives, etc. For us to come out and do that, it takes an obscure architectural approach, and we just feel it's non-conforming again. The new proposed terms seem like they haven't been addressed at all. However, they're played with the architectural plan, the end result is still the same.
I have a question.
Good.
Mr. Hartunian,
Yes.
and we appreciate you taking the time to come out, and I do recall you being involved over the years. And so when we're looking at the, on the screen there, as the story poles are depicted, I assume to the north would be the house on the left side, right?
That's the house to the north. That's to the south, yes.
That's, south is the right?
Yes.
South is the right and north is to the left?
Correct. So his
Yes
structure.
or no? Bill, yeah? So I'm looking at this location
Okay,
map.
no problem.
So essentially,
North is left.
in this case, this is considered correct, north,
Yeah, so,
south.
and so if we could go back to the street view, it seems as though the house on the left, which is on the north side, is depressed
Okay.
somewhat more.
This is,
But it has kind of a dual height. Some of it is 1 story and some of it is 2 story. Once it comes up.
of course, it comes up.
No.
yeah.
It has that effect, I think. But
Might take a second to generate.
There's a variety of conditions on this block. There are a number of houses that are somewhat below street level, and then there's some where the lot rises up to just about street level.
And so what I was trying to say is, on the house on the left here,
This
right,
particular one.
over the garage, the second story
Mhm.
steps back. On the house on the right, though, on the south side of the subject property, it's more of a rectilinear, kind of a more typical Mediterranean look, where it's more of a square, and the second floor doesn't step back. And so, with that in mind, as you've looked at these drawings, and I'm sure you've studied them, what are some comments that you have that holistically the neighborhood seems to have as way to improve it.
You know, of course, it does come off boxy, but, you know, I understand he doesn't have much to work with, you know, and of course, fine, you know, let him build his house to the maximum square footage he can, why not? But if he's doing that, he could further depress the grading, can he?
No cross communication.
No cross communication.
Okay. So
the
you
idea
know,
would be to
I
lower it.
feel like if he just depressed it a little more and knocked off the main floor from, I think it was initially 11 feet, but now if he cuts it to 10 feet, which is already a super high ceiling for a floor, for a house. I mean, that's gonna show some kind of conformity to the slope of homes and the height structure in accordance too.
Understood.
You know, I mean,
you've answered my question.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Last speaker card is for Gevorg Chivincian.
Oh.
Okay, thank you. So no other speaker cards. I'm sorry?
I believe
Yeah.
there were other speaker cards.
Is there other folks that would like to speak that have not spoken that would like to come up?
You could come up, speak, state your name, and then fill out a card afterwards.
No, we're not transferring time. So if anyone wants to speak that has not spoken, they can come up and do so, but they have to fill out a comment card.
I think he's saying he's already filled out a card.
No. You have a rebuttal period coming up for your rebuttal. If you want to give part of that rebuttal time to the project owner, you can. The property owner, you can, sir. You have a rebuttal period.
There's a 2-minute total rebuttal, so between the two of you.
Just I have one issue.
Oh, Garo?
Sarah,
There-
I think your client wants
You have
2 minutes.
You have 2 minutes
Do I
total.
take a minute each? Those.
Go ahead, sir. Name your name
Just I want
for the
to
record.
mention, thank you, Garo Nazaria, to mention the opposition that they talked about, that height issue. Just I have an analysis here, which they are telling the height, it's too much for this building. It's all this information, diaphragm, it has been prepared by the certified surveying map. You know, we do have the survey map that I sent it to calculate, you know, no, I have this, which, it's a big,
It's up.
Right there.
Okay, thank you.
all that data that I have there, it's based on a certified survey of information that they get. And this is a section view of the street. This is the first house in the corner, which the house is above the street level. It's a one-story low house. But this is the next door house, and this is the project. Comparing the height issue, the project, it's lower than this house, and it's almost matching with the other buildings. There is no height issue for this building. It's not a huge, tall building.
Sir, when you say this house, that house, you're referencing the neoclassical building to the south, correct?
That north. The north building.
The building that is
on
in
the left
view.
side, yeah. On the
So
left.
your project is going to be the same height as that building?
Lower than that. It's not the same.
It's going to be lower than that. Okay.
But they're different. That building has a setback second floor, and yours
Yes.
doesn't. So in a sense,
But I'm talking about the overall height.
Okay.
And anyway, the height is not an issue because even by lowering, depressing the building pad elevation by 2 feet, I think that I comply with all these, issues.
And there was a question raised in terms of additional depression, and you said I'll answer that. Like, do you
No,
have any?
I don't answer to, I just am here to discuss.
No,
the
I'm
issue
just
with the
wondering,
board.
like, what is your view on the additional depression?
Because as the owner mentioned, having the impression of the going into the basement and already I depressed, and by depressing 2 feet, always I am the same, in the same situation with the neighboring building. There is only one building, which is this one, which is depressed about 5 feet. The other one, it's depressed again, foot, 18 inches, 2 feet, not more than that.
Let me ask you a question, sir. When you're standing at the curb, looking at your property, on the right side, the right property line, and also the left property line, at the curb,
Yes,
how much of a difference is there from the top of curb from one side to the other?
I can read it from this side plan.
Please come on up.
The top of the curb here, it's 490.
Here you go, Gar.
490, 495.55,
494, okay.
495.
5, okay.
And here, the top of the curb is 493.82.
Oh, so about a
foot
foot
and a
through.
couple inches.
It
I'm
goes
sorry,
down.
493.
And 9
92.
inches.
455, 493, sorry, 495, 493, 2 feet. That is 55, 82,
About a foot
foot and a half.
and
And-
about 18 inches.
And the question I have is, what's your finished slab?
493. 493. Previously was 495. I depressed it 2 feet to 493.
So you're basically at the same level on the northern tip of the curb,
Yes,
more or less.
more or less.
I see. So the reason why I'm bringing this up, even though you brought it down 4 steps, you're still at the same level at the curb on the left side. So perception-wise, I mean, I know you're thinking you're going down, but in essence, the left side is almost the same as the curb. So your house is still gonna look apart. But I don't wanna have cross-communication, but thank you for answering that question for me. Yes. Anything else as a rebuttal that you may have?
That situation always applies to these adjacent buildings.
It's always gonna apply on
On
that.
this, yeah.
on a-
On the one side, it's the same level of the curb, but on my calculation, although they are from the information, it's taken from the center of the property.
I understand.
Because not the highest or the lowest, the center.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the
I
public
think,
comments.
Mr. Chairman, 1 second.
Sorry, sir.
Do you think we should bring up the owner and talk about whatever you spoke about and just get his opinion on if an additional foot will apply? Just get
I
his take.
mean, we've heard that wants the height, he wants to stick to his height, so I don't think he's going to change his mind.
No, but I think there is a misunderstanding that he's thinking he's building a basement where he's going down.
Okay.
Where Mr. Simonian brought up a really good idea that he's not really going down that much.
Sir, would you come up? We have a question for you. State your name for the record.
Sergio Saroyan, I'm the owner's son.
Go for it.
As you've noticed over the years, right, so we get to the design review board, and a lot of times our intent is to create a compromise, is to make at least everybody somewhat, perhaps, they're not entirely happy, but at the same time, they're compromising. And what do they say when a compromise occurs is when both sides aren't entirely happy, right? So when we're looking at your top of curbs on the left side of your property, the way your architect has designed the building, really, at this corner right here, let's say, you're
Where your
pretty
driveway
much-
would be.
You're pretty much, your driveway is at the same level as the top of curb. So on the entire left side of your property, as you're looking at it, you're at the same level as the curb. As you start moving towards the center of your property where you have your steps, you have a few steps going down, then not just because of the way the
Elevation.
elevation. Yeah. So, and then what we were hearing from, the neighbors and the holistic group over there was,
Very holistic.
if, say, the property was depressed, even a foot, right, it makes a difference. So what I wanted to illustrate, what Mr. Bellion wanted to also emphasize, was that there might be a perception from your end that it's the end of the world and that you're creating this, dungeon-like of a house that you described earlier, I think is the way you referred to it, but in essence, on the left side, you would only be coming down a foot on the entire driveway. So we thought that was kind of a good idea to share with you.
Okay, as we're speaking right now and I'm communicating about this, I have a question. When my house was 2 feet higher, wasn't the whole appearance of a house 2 feet higher at that time? I mean, you would assume so,
The
right?
answer is yes.
So if we would have brought out 1 foot at that time, we would have basically been in a situation where we'd still be in the same situation. Right now, we'd be still lower at that when I was before. But what I want to show you before we continue, can I show you something on the diagram over there? Can I step over?
Come on up.
This was done by city survey right here. We're the fourth highest house in the view line. You look at it here. 517.44, 517.68, and this one's 513.92. This house is 519.21, 518.65. So we're right on one thing, on the parameter of the city line. Now, I don't know what you're suggesting is if I mean, by elevation of the street.
Let me rephrase this.
Okay.
Let me rephrase this, okay? You've agreed with your architect because your architect has twisted your arm, and I understand where you're coming from.
He's a great guy, great architect.
To reduce by 2 feet, okay? The way that these reductions work is you look at the number in the middle of the lot, and we have a situation where this lot is not a big variance. It's 1.5 feet from one side from the north corner to the south corner, okay? You have a neighborhood that says, we don't care what he builds, what it looks like, build whatever, but we don't want that height to be tall, okay? Now, we have to make a decision. Okay. That decision is going to be based on your 6-year battle and also the neighborhood and the context. Now, we'll get into the context in a minute. The question is very simple. Would you be okay with a drop to the 2 feet or up to 2 feet, but taking that measurement not in the middle of the lot? Can I get a middle of the lot anywhere? Jeez. Not in the middle of your lot. Let's go here because this is the current house, right? But actually at this point here, which would have the same effect. It would be a little lower from that point of view, but it would solve a lot of a problem. And it doesn't have to be the full 2 feet. It would be the 1 foot that the potential neighborhood is recommending.
But in that case, let's just elevate a house from where we used to be before and just go from there. Let's see what you propose from there.
I'm sorry, what?
Let's elevate to house how it was before, and let's go, show me how much you want to do this from that point, and we'll talk from there. If we're going to do this from here.
So you're saying that you're not okay with that?
I just want to see what your numbers are. I just want to see how much.
No, just another foot from whatever we're looking at now.
We're just moving the calculation point from the center of the lot to the southern.
So now a foot from the southern lot?
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, as we're here right now.
No. I think we're done.
No,
I just asked the question.
I want to come. This is.
I understand, but
No, the intent was to bring you up and
to ask that question.
To really explain. And we get it. You're never going to be happy. They're never going to be happy.
Well,
We
he's
get it.
not a
And so
neighbor.
with that said, I think I had my question answered. And
okay, we're done. We're going to close it up. Thank you very much.
Billy, you had something to say?
Yep.
Do you have anything? Okay. Who would like to start?
I can start.
Mr. Bellion, start.
You know, I really feel the applicant, and I understand how frustrated he is after 6 years of trying to build something, and he's in the middle of a battle. I mean, it's not cheap to come to design review board. The time that they lose, the cost. I mean, there's so many things associated with it. So I totally understand, and I feel his pain as a person that's in the architecture and development world. I understand like how difficult is it to have like a piece of land and not be able to build on it, especially when the hang up is something so minor like that. Even though he's dramatic and that's why I wanted Mr. Simonian to explain it, because he does it he does it in such a way where I mean, I don't know how to say it, but you're good.
We tried.
Yeah. So totally understand where you're coming from. Just to comment on the design, that's not my probably preference style, but I totally understand where design staff is coming from. This is the neighborhood, the style, it fits the neighborhood, and I agree with that. I totally understand his point of view also being one of the smaller houses, because probably the zoning has been, the area has been downzoned or something, where all the neighboring houses are way bigger than his. So I totally get all that, and I appreciate the fact that the architect came back and depressed the house and reduced the second floor house. They gave those couple of feet. So I think they reduced the second floor house by a foot, and they depressed the property by 2 feet, so that's about 3 feet. And from my understanding, that was like the initial hang-up from the previous DRBs. I wasn't part of it, so I don't know all the details, but that's the gist I get. In terms of what we have here today, to be honest, I feel how passionate he is about the 10-6 and not the 10. And I understand for some people 6 inches is just 6 inches is nothing, but I understand his passion, and if he waited 6 years, I'm okay with him having those 6 inches. But the depression part, that's the part that I think if we depress it another foot, it's not gonna, it really not gonna hurt his project, and it'll create also a compromise to the neighborhood. So I'm okay with that. I'm also okay with what they're proposing, depending on what the other 2 board members decide. If I find support to approve it as is, I'm okay with that as well, because at the end of the day, I mean, a foot, it makes sense for them, but they did give 2 feet. So if we want to talk about compromise, we also need to talk about what the compromise they're making. So we have, I mean, that's just being fair. I mean, these are my comments. I'd like to hear what you guys have to say, and we'll go from there. But
Okay. Mr. Simonia?
Well, I do appreciate everyone coming out, and we realize it's a long process, these, projects that go back and forth many, many years. And we have, I don't know, a few of these at any given point in time where they're just recurring projects. They come back and come back and come back. And at some point, a compromise is reached, ultimately. And that's what I was really talking about earlier. Our intent is when a project is completely headed in the wrong direction, as we kind of sensed earlier this evening on one of them, we pull it back and we say, no, this is kind of the direction we'd like you to go in. And we help the applicant so they're not spending more time and more efforts for something that's not going to work. So we're very upfront with them. At other times, something just requires some tweaking, little tweaking, and we make conditions, and staff deals with it afterwards, and we approve it with conditions. In this case, you could tell that both sides weren't willing to compromise. It went all the way to City Council, and some comments were made, and now we have compromises being made on one side, which is wonderful, and it's very different because this neighborhood, the design of the overall neighborhood and the way the homes were built throughout the years, weren't really built by, let's say, the design standards that we employ today, to the point of conformity and compatibility, etc. And so we feel the frustration. You're looking at the neighbors and you're going, they have such bigger homes on similar lots, and why can't I do that? And that was a different time, different rules, different set of codes, etc. And so the design, I think, as staff has put out, fits the neighborhood. I mean, it's nothing that we would have maybe approved on a different neighborhood, but in this neighborhood, they're all the same, and so we put that aside. Then I get to where we are today in the situation, and to me, I think I could support approving this project if it was reduced 1 more feet in the living level down. And so on the left side is where it would affect it, and that would go down 1 feet. I still think that the 10'6" is a big deal for, and I'm okay with that. I did think that there was some compromise that I heard a little bit of, that the architect mentioned the parapet might be able to come down 6 inches, in which case it doesn't affect anything on the inside, but the parapet gets pulled down. So I could support the project if the living level goes down 1 more feet and the parapet is reduced by some inches, maybe up to 6 inches if possible. And I think that would give, you know, the neighbors as well, their compromise as well, and the satisfaction that everybody made a compromise, and hopefully you could have your home and your family will be able to live there, and everybody could turn into cordial neighbors.
And again, just to emphasize that area and where it drops, I think that additional feet, it's not gonna really like.
It won't affect it.
It won't affect it much. I know you guys are not in that business. We are. When we tell you it's not gonna affect you, it's not gonna affect you. Trust us on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to keep this short and sweet. I agree on the comment that this design anywhere else wouldn't have not worked. I think that the entrance is not in proportionality with the house. I think that entrance needs to go up a little bit to kind of fix that volume. So that needs to happen. I can support the project with reducing the parapet. I think that's a good solution. I have no opinion on reducing it another foot.
You mean depressing?
Depressing, sorry. So, but that,
I'm okay with either one, but I think that's a good compromise to make everybody happy.
It would depend on whoever's making the motion.
Right.
so with that,
Do we have any, did we add any conditions
We
to
did.
staff's conditions? I know staff brought back a condition which might be part of what we're gonna add anyways.
Well, exactly. This was the condition with regards to depressing the garage for a sloped driveway.
Okay, so basically, we haven't really added.
And not just but the
But
entire.
is everyone supportive of staff's conditions besides that at the moment?
Yeah.
yes.
And then also to retain the surveyor that we would like to see.
Okay.
So it
So they're
would,
doing construction, they'll look at the overall height.
the overall height.
No, and this way the applicant have his 10-6, you know, that will affect his life inside. The additional foot, the additional step, I don't think it's gonna make any.
Right, so what Billy is talking about is a survey.
No, I know.
Yeah. And that way the neighbors you'll be, in a way satisfied that the height is being surveyed, and as depicted in what's being approved is actually being surveyed. So that's rewarding as well. So do you want to make a motion, Mr. Billion, and we see where we end up?
Vilya, you have a question?
Depending on, and forgive me, I perhaps should wait for that motion, because just the wording, if you decide to move forward with the additional foot reduction in
What
the
I think
finished floor,
that's what would
Okay.
be in his condition.
that is something that.
Well, no, that's gonna be part of his motion of how it moves forward on it.
Is there a motion?
Do you wanna make a motion?
I just want to discuss it a little further.
Oh,
Sure.
with Mr.
sure.
Charshin,
Yeah.
Because
Look.
I saw like him and I are on the same board.
Yeah,
in
look,
terms of,
for
like,
me,
the
for
foot.
look, for me, this is a foot, right? It, after all this, I don't think, and with the size of houses that are in this neighborhood, and the heights on some of these homes, and just the house next door, and the representation that I'm going to trust that the house is going to be, as designed currently, lower than its northern neighbor. I don't want to see this in 3 months because the homeowner doesn't want to go down a foot, right? Because I don't think that that's what we're trying to do here. I think the parapet idea
So
of
what if
reducing
we
the
do
parapet
6 inches and 6 inches, 6 inches on
from the parapet?
depression and 6 inches from the parapet, and that gives the homeowners a foot, and that reduces.
If that's your motion, let's see how it works.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to staff's conditions. So the first recommended condition in the staff report was to reduce the ceiling height to 10 feet to comply with the previous. So we're striking that.
We're striking.
Okay. So we are maintaining the conditions with regards to recessing all windows from the wall and substitute the sliding windows and doors on the front elevation with casement windows and French doors. Is there
Correct.
consensus on that? Second condition would be to lower the, in this case, I'm hearing to redesign that front entry, because originally staff had said just lower the second floor octagonal window and consider redesigning the shape and size of this window to be more proportionate.
That can happen, this can come down and it can fix that, or this can go up and that can fix it, either way. for me.
Would you want it to be closer to the previous?
previous-
Design?
I
mean,
think the
I-
previous design fits better.
I think, yeah, it goes better with the style.
So essentially to redesign the proposed front entryway to match what was previously proposed.
I think
in
I think the condition should be to.
Could I make a,
Proportion.
go ahead.
Yeah, proportionate.
Personally speaking, I think it's more of a hardship on the applicant to redesign the front entry, because it's gonna take them more time and effort than them just simply dropping the slab, because that's just, you literally dropping your section a foot, as opposed to redesigning your front facade, but that's just my.
No, I'm not, I'm just talking about the
front
the
edge.
ornamental
I get
treatment.
it, but they gotta redo it, then they gotta go and meet with staff, and they gotta basically, go
They're not-
back and forth on the facade.
We're not gonna have, I don't
We're
believe that.
used to that, but-
This isn't something that is going to be
I know,
problematic.
to me, that seems like more of an effort, but okay.
I mean, let me put it this way, I agree with staff that as depicted on that rendering, there's a problem with the front.
Redesign the
Fine.
front entry, we'll leave it up to
We,
them.
we can just, or we can keep the original staff condition to lower the second floor octagonal window and consider redesigning the shape and size of this window to be more proportionate to the recessed central portion above the front entry,
Or redesign the entry.
or redesign.
Give
That
them
works.
the freedom to
Correct.
get whatever they
Okay.
want.
The other condition, the next condition was to ensure that all trim, molding, and cornices shall be light concrete and not foam molding. Next condition was to match the garage door color to the lighter molding trim or the darker basalt stone tile to provide a contrast. Yes, I'm hearing that, yes. Now going back to retain a licensed surveyor to verify the final overall height at the time of framing inspection. And to ensure that the height will match what was now going to be said, which is to depress an additional 6 inches, correct? Not a foot, 6 inches.
The parapet.
But
6 inches.
to depress
No,
the
that's-
parapet, and then
that's-
also
that's
to
not a
depress,
Yeah.
and to depress the 6 inches for the finished floor, for
To
the
get-
overall
to get the
building.
foot,
To
correct.
get the overhaul
Correct.
foot. So,
Because the 6 inch in the parapet is not gonna affect.
correct. So it'd be to reduce the parapet an additional, to reduce the parapet height an additional 6 inches. And then to also depress an additional 6 inches the finished floor. And this would be going down to, and I just want to read it into the record because I don't want to make sure.
92.5?
Correct, 92.5. So 92.5. And then also to maintain the overall heights within
Wait,
the
hold on,
building
hold on.
as shown
The
in the
finished-
cross-section.
But the finished floor is 493.69, so if you go to 92.5, you're dropping it 1.1, so.
I was told it was 93 earlier.
Well, I think right here is 493.69, Vilya.
I'm looking at, it's 493.69. So what do we
Garage and
say, 493 even?
That's a nice even number.
Yeah.
So 493 even. And then that way we can verify the height from there.
From a 493.
Because it's proposed at, I believe, 23.9. So if they reduce it an additional 6 inches on the parapet, we're going down to 23.3.
Works. That's the motion.
The motion is approve with
To
conditions.
approve with the stated conditions.
I have a motion by Board
there
Member
a second?
Benlian.
I'll second it.
And a second by Board Member Simonian. In terms of roll call, Board Member Benlian.
Yes.
Board Member Simonian.
Yes.
Chairman Charchian.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously, 3-0.
Okay. I'm going to request that we postpone approval of the minutes until the next time because I got a text I need to leave.
All right, that's fine.
And I'd like to go ahead and adjourn.
Of course. So I believe
Second.
that there would be a motion to adjourn the meeting at
Yes.